American comic, I'm lost, I'm surrounded by superheroes with father issues. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 226, Azu prepares to fight with Supergirl. Azu accelerated in the air, then turned sharply downward, piercing into dense forest like a missile. After landing, he immediately activated his super speed and moved hundreds of meters away from the landing point. Azu's supervision kept watching the blonde woman, who followed closely and landed on the ground. After hovering for 2 circles, the blonde woman flew high into the sky. Azu watched the other person's back as she left. He was not sure he could take her down now, so he prepared to go home and call for help. A few minutes later, with a bang, Azu landed on the farm and exhaled with lingering fear. After looking around and confirming that the other person had not caught up with him, Azu finally let go of his hanging heart. He pinched his waist, took a deep breath, and his cheeks swelled like a big mushroom. After exhaling the air in his mouth, Azu's messy mood was relieved. He looked up at the living room of the farm and found that Peter was not at home. Thinking about the origin of the woman just now, Azu took a step towards the living room. But after walking a few steps, he suddenly stopped and looked at the cowshed. After a few shudders in his throat and a moment of hesitation, Azu walked towards the cowshed. There happened to be a milking iron barrel next to him. In order to relieve his current nervousness, Azu decided to relieve his stress in the same way as before. He walked to the cow, looked around to make sure no one noticed him, then sat down and skillfully milked the cow. In the middle, he raised his head from time to time to look towards the entrance of the farm because he was worried about being discovered. When he finally finished milking, Azu stood up, smelled the fishy smell of fresh milk, swallowed his saliva, raised the iron barrel and poured it into his mouth. "Are you hungry, John?" The next second, a voice that shocked him sounded from behind him. Azu turned around mechanically and saw Peter standing next to the fence of the cowshed, looking at him with his hands folded on his chest. Seeing that his behavior was caught by Peter on the spot, Azu was stunned. Because he forgot to breathe, he choked and milk stains suddenly flowed out from the corners of his mouth. An awkward atmosphere filled the air. Azu really wanted to dig a hole in the ground and crawl into it. But considering that he would have to face life after all, he finally laughed awkwardly. "This cow is in some pain, Dad. I'm helping him. Drinking raw milk is unhygienic. If you want to drink milk, there's a lot in the refrigerator." Peter pretended to believe his nonsense and suggested to him. He knew that Azu liked to drink milk since he was a child. Especially when he was under a lot of pressure, he would often secretly squeeze raw milk to drink. Of course, these were all told to him by Clark, and now Azu was finally caught by himself. "Yes, I know, Dad, I'm just trying to help the cow. It's too swollen." When Azu said it's too swollen, he thought of what Madeleine said to him before in the Black Robe world. The part of the cow where milk is squeezed overlaps with Madeleine's part. With a cough, Azu threw this unhealthy idea out of his mind. He put down the bucket of milk. "It should be much better now. Are you sure?" "Yes." Azu wiped the milk from his mouth. "Dad, I have some questions to ask you." As he spoke, Azu walked over and took the opportunity to change the subject. Of course, Peter did not continue to pester the other party about milking. "What do you want to ask, John?" "I want to know, Dad, do you have a child who is out there? Like me, or like Clark?" "What?" Peter was stunned after hearing Azu's words. "Is this kid out of his mind? I'm a person who flirts with people everywhere." Peter narrowed his eyes and looked at Azu dangerously. "Why do you ask that, John?" "I'm just asking casually." Sensing the ominous atmosphere in the air, Azu quickly explained. Peter narrowed his eyes and asked him, "Really? Did something happen to you, John?" "No, nothing." Azu quickly waved his hand. Peter looked at him suspiciously, always feeling that this kid was hiding something. At night, on the farm, Peter was eating dinner when he saw a news interruption on TV. More than 2 cases of missing children occurred in the kindergarten in Smallville. The police investigated the kindergarten and learned that an unidentified woman had appeared in the kindergarten. In addition, it is reported that the woman also appeared in other kindergartens. Hereby reminds residents of Smallville who have children to take precautions against safety. Looking at the surveillance photo of the female suspect on the TV screen, Peter frowned slightly. He looked at the other party's wrist and found that the other party was wearing a bracelet engraved with the letter S. Is it Kryptonian text? Looking at the other party's blonde appearance, Peter pondered. Is this Kara? Supergirl Kara Zor-El, Clark's cousin. The other party was born more than 10 years earlier than Superman and is Superman's cousin. When Krypton was destroyed, Kara's spaceship followed Karl's spaceship, but a meteorite hit her spaceship when Krypton exploded, so she deviated from the established orbit and entered a long-term hibernation. When she came to Earth, she was nearly 40 years old, but her body and memory still remained in the state of a teenager. Now that she appeared here, it meant that her spaceship had arrived on Earth, and she herself had ended her long sleep. After waking up, she began to look for Clark's trace. As for her appearance in the kindergarten, she probably thought her cousin was still a child. It is very likely that she has not yet realized that she has been asleep for more than 10 years, and Clark has grown from a child to a high school student. Azu next to her was slightly dazed when she saw Kara on TV. Did the other party kidnap children? At the same time, Talon Cafe. The blonde girl who had fought with Azu during the day, that is, Kara, pushed open the door and walked in. There were not many people in the bar, and occasionally a few idle customers gathered together to chat about something. Hi, is there anything I can help you with? Lana came over with a tray and asked her. Yes, I want to find someone named Kal-El. Do you know him? He should be young, a few years old, or older, Kara asked Lana. Have you heard of him? Sorry, Lana smiled awkwardly at her. I haven't heard of this name. Did you lose your child? Or is he your relative? Yes, he's my cousin. Kara pondered for a moment and thought of Zu who fought with him during the day. The other party has the same ability as herself. Is he also a Kryptonian? She sat down next to the bar with a confused mood and continued to ask Lana, can I ask you about someone? Of course. So Kara described Zu's appearance to Lana. After listening to Kara's description, Lana thought for a moment. I can't tell you exactly, because I haven't seen the person you described, but you said that he had a school badge on his shirt, and he disappeared in the northwest of Smallville. I guess that might be John. John, yes, John Patrick, from Patrick's farm. Lana said her guess. You just said that he had a conflict with you. I guess Uncle Patrick will punish him again if he knows. Who is the Uncle Patrick you are talking about? Peter Patrick, John's father. Although Clark and John seem to be very powerful, it seems that they have been suppressed by Uncle Patrick since they were young. Lana remembered a zombie attack in the auditorium when she was a child. At that time, Peter could carry her out of the zombies, while Azu and Clark could only cheer on the side. Is he very strong? Kara asked in shock. Could the other party's physical fitness be better than that of John? At this time, Kara had a strong curiosity about Peter. Maybe you can come visit. Lana was about to continue talking to her when Aunt Neil's voice came. Lana, come here. Sorry, I have to leave first. Lana smiled at the other party and left with a tray. But just as she walked to the bar cashier, she saw the news on TV. Seeing the photo of the suspect related to the missing child case on the screen, Lana looked away and walked towards the back kitchen. But soon her movements were stunned. The suspect just now seemed to be the girl she was talking to. Swallowing her saliva, Lana turned her head mechanically and looked at what Kara was sitting. The other party had disappeared. Huh? Lana exhaled and patted her chest. But she soon realized that she had just done something stupid. She told her the address of Uncle Patrick's house. Would she let the wolf into the house and harm Uncle Patrick? Thinking of this, she felt a little uneasy and immediately took out her mobile phone and called the police. After calling the police, she hesitated for a while and decided to let Aunt Neil notify Uncle Patrick. The next day, early in the morning, Peter went to Kent Farm to discuss the matter with the couple because of the farm. As soon as he drove away from the farm, he received a call from Neil. Neil conveyed Lana's words and asked him to pay attention to the female suspect who might appear. After Peter thanked her, he continued to drive to Kent Farm. He did not take Supergirl seriously. Not to mention that the other party was not a villain. Even if the other party was, he believed that Zu and others on the farm could deal with it. What he did not expect was that Zu and others were indeed discussing how to deal with Supergirl. After Zu finished breakfast, he rarely called Clark, Star-Lord and Loki over and told them what happened yesterday. Anyway, this woman is a villain, and the Smallville kindergarten incident is inseparable from her, Zu said to Loki and the other two. More importantly, she can fly, has laser eyes, super strength and super speed. It is difficult for us to deal with her alone, so we have to work together. I am not alone, my brothers, you are the real heroes. Chapter 227 Supergirl vs. Azu 4. She could be a human trafficking gang, or a wolf in human skin. I think you should say she's a Nazi, Loki suddenly interrupted. Zu narrowed his eyes and glared at him. Can you please not interrupt me while I'm talking? Okay, go on. Loki smiled at Zu. What if she really is the Godfather's daughter? I mean, she looks the same as us. Clark asked Zu his own question. No, brother, of course she's not. That's absolutely impossible. Zu quickly denied, raised his hands and pressed them down. Because she is evil. How could Dad have such an evil daughter? Think about what she did. The disappearance of the two children was related to her, and she would grab the children like a piglet without hesitation. Dad would not have such a villain daughter. Although Zu also suspected that the other party was his father's daughter, he couldn't say it under such circumstances. Otherwise, his behavior of driving the other party out of Smallville would have no legitimacy. We are helping Smallville now. Think about it. No one can stop her except us. With a bright smile on his face, Zu raised his fist and said to the others, we are the only ones who can stop her. This is our meaning, the meaning of our greatness. Clark listened to Zu's words and fell into deep thought. He felt that this scene was familiar. Zu, are you sure you are not imitating the speech of the people in the Black Robe world? But, Star-Lord frowned. I think we should inform Dad. Hey, listen, Star-Lord, you don't have to report everything to your father. This is our private action. After speaking to Star-Lord, Zu looked at Loki. Loki, do you have any opinions? No, I agree with you. This time Loki was quite cooperative, which made Zu a little uncomfortable. Very good, it seems that we have reached an agreement. Zu nodded with satisfaction. Just when Zu wanted to continue to say something, there was a sudden sound of footsteps outside. Knock. 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 The living room door was knocked, and Zu and the others looked up and looked outside. The person standing outside made Zu's eyes focus. This guy was the blonde who fought with him yesterday. Zu, feeling threatened, took a deep breath and walked to the door. Kara saw Zu's appearance, and her eyes suddenly lit up. It's you? You actually chased me to my house. Zu put his hands behind his back and said to Supergirl rudely. Yes, I came to find you. Kara stood outside the door. Why? You won't let me in. Zu took a deep breath and opened the door to let the other party in. Thank you. After Kara entered the room, she saw that there were other people in the room and nodded slightly. So, what do you want to do? Zu asked the other party. Don't worry, I'm not looking for you to fight. I want to talk to your father. Kara looked at Zu and asked him, where's your father? Zu heard that the other party was looking for his father, and his vigilance immediately rose to the highest level. Could it be that the other party wanted to return to his ancestral home? He's not here, and he won't see you, Zu said to her rudely. Did you kidnap the kindergarten child? Clark next to her suddenly asked her. No, that has nothing to do with me. Kara shook her head, indicating that it had nothing to do with her. Clark came over and suggested to him, maybe we can go to the police station to figure it out first. You mean, arrest me as a criminal? Kara's eyes turned unfriendly. If you didn't do it, you wouldn't be a criminal. Clark frowned and said to her. At this time, he didn't know that the other party was his cousin. You can try to see if you can touch me, Kara threatened Clark. Bang! As soon as she finished speaking, Azu's zero-frame thermal vision shot the other party away. With a bang, Kara's body smashed through the wall, bounced on the ground several times, and then slowly stopped. Go! After Azu shouted to Clark and others, he instantly activated his super speed and flew towards Kara. It was a bit difficult for him to deal with this woman alone before, but now there are 4 people on his side, and Azu is full of confidence at this time. Kara got up from the ground and her face suddenly became ugly. She looked at her dirty clothes and thought of Azu's lack of martial ethics. She was completely ignited by anger. With a bang, she caught Azu's fist, then grabbed his face with her other hand and pressed it hard to the ground. In an instant, the ground that was hit broke like a cracker, and spider-web-like cracks continued to extend. Do you think I dare not hit you? Kara gritted her teeth and shouted softly, then grabbed Azu's face and suddenly exerted force, throwing him horizontally like a rag. Azu tried his best to adjust his body in the air, but he still couldn't stop his body, and crashed into his favorite bullpen. Seeing Azu being beaten, Clark immediately took action. With a whoosh, he quickly moved in front of Kara. Kara didn't expect that there was someone else here who could have such a fast speed besides Azu. In a moment of carelessness, he was hit hard by Clark. In an instant, She flew straight out along the horizon as if she was hit by a high-speed train. The air roared and the whole space seemed to tremble slightly. The turbulence continued to spread in all directions, and the soil on the grass was shaken. With a bang, Kara's whole body hit the barn, and the wall of the barn was broken at once, and a big hole was opened on the back. The main beam inside the barn was destroyed in an instant, as if it had been hit by the waves. As the building materials on the top fell clattering, everything trembled, and it seemed that the barn would collapse in the next second. Feeling the pain in her chest, Kara's face was extremely ugly. With a tang, she flew into the sky. The air wave generated by the takeoff turned into the last straw that broke the camel's back. The huge barn collapsed with a loud bang, emitting thick smoke and dust. "It's over. Dad will definitely be angry when he comes back." Star-Lord widened his eyes and looked at the scene that happened in front of him in an instant in disbelief. The barn that was originally intact turned directly into ruin? "Don't panic, Star-Lord, the problem is very serious, and panicking is useless." Loki patted Star-Lord on the shoulder and comforted him. His figure gradually turned into green light and disappeared on the spot. Looking at Clark below, Kara suppressed the anger in her heart and asked, "Who are you?" "I am Clark. I advise you to calm down," Clark said with a serious expression. Hearing this, the veins on Kara's forehead bulged. "It was obviously you who started it first, and now you are still advising me to calm down?" Her eyes instantly glowed with a strong red light. However, at this moment, a hot line of sight from the higher sky cut through the space and hit Kara directly, knocking her to the ground. Looking at his masterpiece, Azu brushed off the weeds on his body with satisfaction. The anger caused by being beaten just now was also reduced a lot at this moment. Strangle Divine, with a low hum of rune magic, Loki's figure appeared in front of Kara. At this time, his appearance had changed. He wore a huge pair of golden horns on his head and held a staff emitting magical fluctuations in his hand. The next moment, dozens of thorny vines broke out of the ground and flexibly wrapped Kara into a dumpling. Loki took a step forward and said to Kara, "I am the god of Asgard, the son of Padrik, and a kind and generous god. Now, surrender to me and I will forgive you, god." Surrender. As soon as Kara's voice fell, the vines constructed by runes exploded instantly. With a bang, Azu, who was standing next to Loki, disappeared instantly. As the strong shock wave scraped Loki's face, Kara replaced the position where Azu was standing. In the farmland hundreds of meters away, as if it was hit by a meteorite, a large area of clearance was cleared, and the thick smoke and dust covered half of the sky at a very fast speed. Loki was stunned for a moment, but he soon reacted and began to recite the spell quickly. However, before he finished reciting the spell in his mouth, he felt the world reversed, and then the pain of his body touching the ground came. Bang! 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 Kara grabbed Loki's calf and slammed him back and forth on the ground several times. Plop! Loki, with clear eyes, was thrown aside. Kara looked at Loki, who was lying on the ground with his hands clasped on his chest. What a weak god, Loki. After defeating Loki, Kara instantly came to Clark and punched him in the face. With a pop, Clark gritted his teeth and tried his best to catch Kara's punch. Kara looked a little surprised. Based on her instinctive reaction, she hit Clark's other face with her other hand. However, Clark still caught this punch that was far faster than the speed of sound. The two seemed to have a telepathic connection, and their hands were instantly clasped and began to wrestle. Crack crack, in just a few seconds, cracks began to appear on the ground under their feet. At this time, Star-Lord, who had not taken any action, began to breathe rapidly. He didn't expect the woman in front of him to be so difficult. Buzz, with a strange energy buzzing sound, Star-Lord's whole body was covered with a pure white shining light. Under his control, these lights turned into tentacles and shot towards Kara as if they had crossed space. In just a blink of an eye, Kara was tied up. Then, Star-Lord in his shining form rushed forward at the fastest speed and hugged Kara's thighs. Ugh! Kara screamed in shock at the sudden change. She could never have imagined that there were so many people with superpowers in this ordinary farm. Azu, who was bleeding from his nose and covered with dust and weeds, and looked a little embarrassed, moved over in an instant and hugged Kara's waist from behind. With the combined efforts of Clark, Azu and Star-Lord, Kara was thrown to the ground. Clark held down Kara's back in one arm, Azu held down the other side, and Star-Lord used all his strength to control Kara's legs. Loki, who was beaten to the point of doubting his life, also ran over, gritted his teeth, held down Kara's head with both hands, and pressed hard to the ground. just as the four were about to control Kara. Kara gritted her teeth and roared to break free from Star-Lord's divine energy. With a bang, several people were blown away, and Kara, who broke free from control, flew into the sky. Boom! With a sonic boom, Kara disappeared into the sky in an instant. The four people stood up with dusty faces, looking at the collapsed barn and the messy farm in front of them, and looked at each other in bewilderment. It's over. Thank you for your support, readers. Please vote for me. Bo. Chapter 228. The farm is destroyed and Loki hides the truth. Half an hour later, Peter drove back to the farm. As soon as he entered the farm, he noticed that the atmosphere was a little wrong. The air exuded a strong smell of soil and crops, and was also accompanied by some burnt smells. Frowning, Peter turned his head and said to Lena in the back seat, "Clark should be inside." On the way back to the farm, he met Lena. Lena said that she was going to the farm to return a book to Clark. So Peter asked her to get in the car and took her to the farm. Lena also felt that something seemed to have happened on the farm. She looked at the farm and asked Peter, "Uncle Patrick, what happened?" "I don't know." Peter shook his head, opened the car door and walked forward. Lena hurried to keep up with his pace. Although she told Peter that she came to the farm to return the book to Clark, Lena's real purpose was to confirm whether Peter had any accident. After all, it was she who told the suspicious woman the address of Peter's home yesterday. If Peter really had an accident, he would have made an unforgivable mistake. "John," Peter shouted to the farm. "Clark, Loki, Star-Lord, are you there?" He called the three names and walked towards the living room. With a creak, the door of the living room was opened. Azu stood at the door and greeted him with a smile on his face. "Dad, there's a strange smell in the farm." Peter frowned and asked Azu, "Did you fight again?" Hearing Peter mention fighting, Azu's heart skipped. Suppressing his restless mood, Azu forced a smile and said to Peter, "No, Dad, it may be because a wild boar ran into the house just now, but we have driven it away." "Wild boar?" Peter looked at him doubtfully. "Are you sure?" He felt that the other party's words were quite unreliable. "Yes," Azu continued to smile fakely, not letting himself reveal his flaws. "What happened to your face?" Peter looked at the bruises on the other person and asked him, "Is the wound on your face also caused by a wild boar?" Azu was stunned for a moment, took a deep breath, and explained to Peter, "I fell down by myself." "Well, it's not easy to fall down like this," Peter complained to him and went into the living room. Clark heard the sound and went downstairs. He was a little surprised to see Lena appear. He didn't expect Lena to come here at this time. Clark was already feeling uneasy. Would Loki's illusion be discovered by the Godfather? Now that Lena came, he was even more unsure. Clark, with an unnatural expression, walked over to greet Lena. "Hi, Lena, are you okay?" "Clark." Lena looked at Clark's face with bruises and asked him in confusion, "Did you have a conflict with anyone?" "No, I just..." Clark looked at Azu who was holding his waist next to him. "I was just hit by a wild boar. That wild boar must be very powerful. You and John were both injured by it." Lena didn't doubt what the two said. She took out a book from her bag and handed it to Clark. "This is the book you and Chloe accidentally forgot there when you were tutoring in Talon. I put it away for you." "Thank you, thank you." Clark didn't expect Lena to be so careful and help him put away the lost book. He thanked her with some emotion. "Nothing, you didn't meet any strange women." Lena suspected that the wanted female suspect would come to cause trouble, so she asked Clark carefully. No, Clark was not as shameless as Azu. He was not confident when telling lies. And the expression on his face became quite tangled. On the other side, Peter, who was staring at Azu and Clark, was even more certain. These two naughty kids must have caused some trouble. "John, Clark," Peter asked the two in a serious tone, "where are Star-Lord and Loki?" Azu and Clark looked at each other and saw the uneasiness in each other's eyes. "They are upstairs, Dad." "Then call them down." "Okay." Azu and Clark were worried that Loki's bad idea would be exposed. On the other side, Lena received a call from her aunt. After giving Peter an apologetic look, she opened the door and went out to answer the phone. After chatting with Aunt Neil for a few words, Lena closed the phone cover and looked at the farmland in the distance. Taking a deep breath, she walked to the barn and wanted to breathe the smell of the field. She accidentally reached out and touched the wall of the barn. The moment she touched the barn, a strange feeling passed into her fingers. She turned her head and looked at the barn. As a result, in her unbelievable eyes, the barn in front of her began to slowly disappear. The huge barn melted away from top to bottom like a shadow. Instead, the building materials of the collapsed barn under her feet were scattered all over the ground. "What is this?" Lana, who was a little confused, fell into a state of confusion. The barn became like this after being touched by her? She actually destroyed Uncle Patrick's barn with her fingers. At the same time, Peter in the room also felt something. He turned and looked in the direction of Lana outside. He was stunned when he saw the collapsed barn. Peter walked out of the living room quickly and saw Lana standing in front of the collapsed barn. With an ugly face, he immediately realized what happened. Most likely, these naughty kids collapsed the barn, and then Loki used illusion to rebuild a new barn and placed it here. However, since the barn made by the illusion was just a projection, it disappeared directly after being accidentally touched by Lana. Peter's face was a little embarrassed at this time. He was actually deceived by Loki's illusion? Although the barn projected by this kid using magic looks extremely realistic, even the details are filled in. But after being deceived, Peter still feels very angry. He quickly outlines the rune magic to remove the illusion of the entire space. As the rune magic takes effect, the illusion disappears and the real appearance of the farm appears in front of him. Peter stares at the damaged farm in front of him in amazement. The barn behind the farm has completely collapsed, and the scattered wooden buildings are scattered on the ground in a mess. In the distance are damaged crops and cornfields that have been smashed into potholes. The warehouse for storing crops in the east has collapsed in half, and it looks like a hole has been smashed by a violent impact. Only the living room is less damaged, but the porch is still missing half of its site and stands alone. The whole farm looks like it has been bombed by missiles, with potholes everywhere. I was only away from home for half a day, and these guys have demolished my house? The last time Azu and Clark demolished the house, they directly took the plane down from the sky. There was no plane this time, but they demolished such a big barn. In order to cover up his crime, Loki used illusion to rebuild part of the farm. Just by using his memory, he recreated the details of the farm and projected a realistic barn. Should I say he is bold, or has superb skills and memory? Loki. Peter turned his head and looked at Loki standing at the door with gloomy eyes. Loki had an unnatural smile on his face. "Sorry, Dad, I just didn't want Lana to be scared." "Really?" Peter looked at the stunned Lana, "but the result is that you not only scared her, but also scared me. Tell me, what happened? What kind of wild boar can make the farm look like this, and you let it run away?" "Sorry," Godfather Clark wanted to explain, but was immediately interrupted by Peter. "Don't talk, Clark. I will settle accounts with you later." "Loki, tell me what happened. Don't think about hiding or deceiving." Seeing Peter's gloomy face, Loki didn't dare to hide it, so he told Peter the scene of Kara's attack. Based on Loki's description, Peter quickly guessed that the other party was Supergirl Kara. "I'm sorry, Dad," Loki admitted to Peter and apologized. "I just didn't want you to be angry, so I used an illusion." "Oh, so you plan to keep using this illusion to deceive me until I find out the truth?" Peter scolded him unceremoniously. "You just used another mistake to cover up the mistakes you made, but ended up with a worse result. You made a mistake and didn't repent. Is this what you are doing now?" Peter cast a stern look at Zu and Clark. "And you two, as brothers, you two also follow them to make trouble." "I shouldn't do this, Dad." Zu lowered his head and apologized to Peter. "You shouldn't do this, John, because you have always been reckless and arrogant. And you, Clark." Peter cast a stern look at Clark. "You will never use your brain to think about things rationally. If you can think more, you won't end up like this." Peter focused his criticism on Clark and Zu. These two people are older and have not fulfilled their responsibilities as brothers, so Peter is most dissatisfied with them. If you hadn't attacked right away and had taken a calm approach to solve the problem, I think things wouldn't have turned out like this and the farm wouldn't have been destroyed. Peter's tone became more and more severe, and the Zu foursome became more frustrated. Peter criticized him unhappily. He didn't expect that the four of them united to subdue Supergirl, but not only did they let her run away, but they also destroyed the farm. This is not only rebellious, but also incompetent. He couldn't stand it. Chapter 229 I'll kill you all when I put on my clothes. Peter took a few deep breaths and slowly raised his palm. In an instant, Zu and the other four were dragged into the dream world by him using sandbags as punishment. Peter, who had completed everything, was relieved from his excitement. Looking at the naughty children lying in the room, he snapped his fingers, and the latter were moved to the sofa by a force. Lana, who was watching this scene, covered her mouth in shock, looking at everything happening in front of her in disbelief. In the dream city, Zhu looked at the endless demons above his head and pinched his waist helplessly. The densely flying demons in the sky have two glowing red eyes engraved on the metal skull, and there are additional insect arms under the metal wings, which look like eagles or moths. These biological weapons are prisoners captured by the Apocalypse Army from various planets in the universe, and then transformed into biological weapons using Apocalypse technology. The strength of each demon is not very strong. Although it has a fighting power that ordinary humans cannot resist, even non-superpower heroes such as Batman and Green Arrow can fight a large group of demons alone. What is really scary is their number. Their almost endless number completely makes up for the lack of individual strength. If you knock down one, it will surge 10 more. If you knock down 10, it will surge hundreds more. Of course, what is being compared here is not the strength of a single individual, but the fear that can be brought by the whole. Peter used the 3 artifacts of the sleeping demon to create countless demon-like creatures in his dream based on his imagination and reference to the demon-like creatures, and then pulled Azu and the other 4 in. Since they like fighting so much, Peter doesn't mind letting them experience violence. The endless demon-like creatures can make several people enjoy it thoroughly in their dreams. The demon-like creatures with a terrifying appearance roared and rushed towards Azu. Azu's face was ugly, and his eyes instantly shot out red lasers to burn the demon-like creatures into ashes. Clark's figure kept flashing, and he used his fists to bombard. Every punch can directly smash these powerful creatures. Star-Lord and Loki are the same, one uses the power of the gods, and the other keeps chanting spells and using magic. See, I told you this is a bad idea. Azu grabbed a demon and tore it in half from top to bottom, then looked at Loki who was being chased by the demon in the distance. He said to Clark beside him in a bad mood, "If it weren't for Loki's bad idea, we might not be punished by our father like this." He gritted his teeth and grabbed the neck of another demon that rushed towards him. Crack! The neck of the demon was crushed by him. After all, demons are not human, so Azu has no psychological burden when killing them. Of course, even if they are human, he may not have any psychological burden. And that blonde woman, I must catch her next time. After complaining to Clark, Azu suddenly felt a surge of anger in his heart, and he flew higher in the sky with a boom. His eyes began to glow with a strong red light, illuminating most of the city. The next moment, Azu's eyes suddenly fired a laser, which swept across the entire city. Where the laser swept, there was a violent explosion similar to washing the floor. With this attack, countless demons were melted by his heat vision. But more demons came up again. Damn it! Azu cursed angrily and dodged the attack of a larger demon. Then another heat vision swept away dozens of demons surrounding him. Rubbing his sore eyes, Azu looked in the direction of Loki and Star-Lord on the ground. A pure white tentacle extended from Star-Lord's palm, piercing through several demons that wanted to attack him like a string of candied haws. He said to Loki in dissatisfaction, "If it wasn't your idea, we wouldn't be punished by Dad at all. I didn't expect you to think so." "We are best brothers," Loki shrugged and said. "Dad said that you are the god of trickery and conspiracy. You must have anticipated this situation a long time ago." "No, I didn't. I'm not a god. Didn't you say that you are the god of Asgard?" "The god of Asgard is just a status, just like the heir of the farm." After Loki killed the flying demon, he said to Star-Lord, "These are all what I want." At the same time, at Patrick's farm, Lana asked Peter, "Are Clark and the others okay?" "No, they are just tired and need to rest. Young people are energetic and fall asleep immediately," Peter said to the other party as if nothing had happened. "Let's go, I'll take you out." But Lana still didn't recover from the shock just now. She swallowed her saliva and asked Peter, "What were those disappearing projections just now?" "Uncle Patrick, it's just a magic trick." "Magic? Uncle Patrick, are you an alien?" Lana asked a question she had been wondering about. "Why do you ask that?" Peter's eyebrows moved. "Because I have always felt that Uncle Patrick is not an ordinary person since I was a child." Lana recalled the zombie scene she experienced when she was a child. "Of course I am an ordinary person." Peter sat in the driver's seat and opened the door to let Lana in. "It's just that my profession is a magician, so I know a little more." Faced with Peter's nonsense, Lana said that she didn't believe it at all. She asked Peter, "Can an ordinary magician conjure up a barn like you just did?" "That's just a trick." Peter started the car and said to the puzzled Lana, "There are always some extraordinary powers in this world, just like the last time you were possessed by a witch." Lana blushed when she heard Peter talk about the last time she was possessed by a witch. It seems that when she was possessed by a witch last time, many of her behaviors were quite out of line, and now she feels embarrassed when she thinks about it. Anyway, Uncle Patrick, I will keep it a secret for you, Lana said solemnly. Yes, Peter nodded, I watched you grow up, of course I believe you, Lana, although he said so, he is now skeptical about such words. After all, he now has several snitches and secrecy men at home. The confidentiality situation is a mess. Looking out the window and looking at the collapsed barn, Peter frowned. Now he has to ask someone to repair the farm again. It seems that his farm is cursed and can never escape the fate of being smashed. At night, the exhausted Azu and the other four were finally released from the dream world by Peter. The mentally exhausted people lay on the bed and didn't want to stand up at all. Being harassed by the endless demons created by Peter in the spiritual world, the continuous battles made them feel like they had been a few weeks. After understanding the psychological state of the four people, Peter stopped caring. Is it just this point that you can bury it? What should you do when you really face Darkseid's demon army next time? He also plans to create a group of Ultraman monsters in the dream world next time, and then send Azu and the others in. Shaking his head, Peter put the dream aside. He turned on the computer and began to browse the recent news and gossip about the arrival of alien spacecraft. Since Supergirl Kara has arrived on Earth and was beaten up by Azu and his four friends, the other party will definitely not give up. He now wants to know where the other party's spaceship landed and when it woke up. When searching for similar news, a news link popped up. The Torch, Chloe Sullivan. Looking at the signature of the newspaper, Peter frowned slightly. Isn't this Clark's female friend? Clicking on the link, Peter flipped through the gossip news. Chloe's report mentioned, Westover's dam was washed away by the flood, and a spaceship-like existence was washed out by the flood. Locals saw strange symbols on the spaceship, and it was shining. The next day, the spaceship-like object disappeared. The report also showed photos of special symbols on the spaceship. Staring at the photos of special symbols, Peter fell into deep thought. Obviously, this is Kryptonian text. Could this spaceship be the one that Supergirl brought to Earth? It was not a meteorite impact caused by the explosion of Krypton that caused her spaceship to deviate, but she came to Earth with Clark, but she was too unlucky and plunged into the dam, damaging the system and sleeping for more than 10 years. It was not until the dam was destroyed that she saw the light of day again. Thinking of this, Peter suddenly understood why this Supergirl was so irritable. She was unlucky to be trapped under the deep and dark dam for more than 10 years, and her state of mind was probably completely affected. Bang! When Peter was lamenting the bad luck of Supergirl, a heavy landing sound was heard outside. Kara fell from a high altitude to the ground, looking at the farm in front of her with resentful eyes. At this time, she had changed into the Superman uniform, and the black and blue uniform completely outlined her perfect figure. The streamlined S-Krypton logo on her chest formed a hole with her Supergirl uniform, and the red cape fluttered behind her. Kara, who changed into her equipment, was ready to regain her place. She wanted to take back the humiliation given to her by these guys in front of her twice. Kara walked towards the living room in a rage. With a bang, she pushed the door open heavily, and what she saw was Peter sitting on the sofa. The two looked at each other, and Kara's momentum froze. Peter sitting on the sofa made her feel a strong threat. Who are you? Kara asked him with a puzzled expression. I'm Peter Patrick, Peter said calmly. You came to see me during the day, but you don't recognize me now. Kara was stunned for a moment, and looked Peter up and down suspiciously. Are you the father of these four bastards? But that's impossible. You look about the same age as me. You're right, I'm about the same age as you. We are both in our 40s. What? Kara was immediately furious when she heard Peter say he was in his 40s. I'm only 20. How can I be in my 40s? Why are you slandering my age? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 230 Clark, you traitor. Listening to Peter's slander, Kara almost went berserk. Calm down, I can hear your blood rushing to your brain. Take a deep breath. Peter motioned for him to calm down. I don't need you to teach me anything, Kara said to Peter anxiously. Who are you? Why do your sons have the same abilities as me? Maybe you can tell me your name, kid. Kara, you're taking advantage of me. Taking a deep breath, Kara calmed herself down. I'm Kara Zor-El, from Kansas City, Krypton. Kara told her origins, and then asked Peter with great concern, just now, why did you say I was in my 40s? Because after your spaceship arrived on Earth, you slept for more than 10 years. Peter said something that stunned the other party. You thought you just slept and then woke up, but in fact, this sleep was quite long. You grew up by a dozen years, and your cousin has grown up. You said my cousin has grown up, and I slept in the spaceship for more than 10 years. Yes, that's impossible. Kara's mentality collapsed immediately, and she shouted angrily and rushed towards Peter. Liar, Kara, who refused to accept the reality, rushed to Peter in an instant, wanting to catch him and ask him clearly. However, what she didn't expect was that Peter actually reacted and clamped her fist. It seems you need to calm down. Holding Kara's fist, Peter's divine energy instantly exploded in the hands of the two. Kara, who was unable to react in time, was blasted out by this powerful energy, and bang smashed through the newly repaired door, and fell heavily outside. Hearing the sound, Azu and his friends quickly rushed to the living room. Seeing Kara's comeback, the expressions of several people were quite shocked. Especially Clark, who was stunned when he saw the S mark on the other's chest. Isn't this the hope that the Godfather once drew on his chest? Why does the other person have it on his chest too? Huh? Kara, who was knocked away by Peter, stood up and rushed towards Peter again. Seeing this, Peter shook his head and slowly raised one hand to Kara. As the divine energy and runes stirred each other, the brilliant light shone, and a violent flame was instantly born under her feet, sweeping towards her. Seeing the flames coming towards her, Kara immediately flew into the sky with a boom. The roof of the cowshed was blown away by the strong airflow she emitted, and the frightened cows ran wildly. Peter saw that the cowshed was damaged and could no longer sit still. He immediately moved to the cows and controlled them. Fighting is fine, but if the farm is demolished, he will be bankrupt. Seeing that Peter ignored her and went to lead the cows instead, Kara thought she was being looked down upon, and fell into the cowshed with a bang, and was about to attack Peter. But the next second, she saw Peter turned around, holding the green kryptonite in his hand and pointing it at her. Kara suddenly couldn't control her body, and fell to the ground with a thump, shaking uncontrollably. On the side, Clark and others were all stunned to see Kara lying weak in the cowshed. Is this the solution? After Peter used kryptonite to suppress the other party, he said to the weak Kara in a calm tone, this way you can calm down. We need to talk. Kara, you liar, I won't believe you. Kara felt a more obvious weakness in her body, staring at Peter in front of her, and said hatefully. She didn't expect that the other party would use green kryptonite to deal with her. It was the first time she came into contact with this kind of thing on Earth. She felt unprecedented weakness and her legs were so weak that she couldn't stand up at all. How did this guy know that she would be affected by kryptonite? And this kryptonite is the property of her own planet. How could it come here across 33 galaxies? I understand, this is indeed difficult for people to accept. Peter looked at the long-legged beauty lying on the haystack and said slowly, but the worst is yet to come. I hope you can be optimistic. What? Kara lay in the cowshed, looking at the devil-like man in front of her. She suddenly felt that the other party must be a guy full of evil tastes. You said you were from Krypton. I have a sad news for you. Krypton has been destroyed. Hearing this news, Kara suddenly felt a buzz in her head. She realized that the people she loved, the people she knew, and the things she knew were all gone. She realized that time was flying and that the time she had lost could no longer be found. Kara suddenly had the urge to cry. Although she didn't want to believe Peter's words, his voice had a kind of magic, as if what he said was true. His voice made her feel deeply frightened. No, Kara, who covered her face, could no longer control her emotions and burst into tears. You lied, I know you lied. These are all jokes, all conspiracies against my family. Kara covered her face like a girl, sobbing and said to Peter, I don't believe you. Peter pretended to understand. I know this is a big blow, but it's all true, kid. Kara wiped away her tears and said to Peter angrily, what evidence do you have? Evidence? Peter said to Clark, who was stunned on the side. Clark, can you prove it for her? Clark swallowed his saliva and looked at Kara. I think the Kal-El you were looking for is me. I am afraid of kryptonite like you, and I also have a spaceship that landed here with me. The spaceship is under my cellar. Are you Kal? Supergirl was completely stunned. Impossible, you can't even fly. Maybe girls develop earlier than boys, Clark said embarrassedly. I want to find my spaceship. I want to leave this planet. I want to find the truth myself. Supergirl, who was in a mess, wiped away her tears and wanted to leave here quickly. Everything that happened here tonight shocked her, and she needed to digest it all. Will you come with me? Kara asked Clark. Since you are a Kryptonian, let's go save Krypton together. No, Krypton has been destroyed, and Earth is my home. Clark looked at her firmly. The people of this world need me more. Aren't you a Kryptonian? Kara didn't expect Clark to have no feelings for Krypton at all. Yes, the yellow sun of this planet gave me the ability, but the people on this Earth don't have such abilities. They can't protect themselves, and sometimes even hurt each other. They need protection. Clark glanced at Peter. The farm is my home, and the Godfather is my relative now, and they need me more. Peter, you kid, are you using me as a shield? Kara looked at her cousin, gritted her teeth and turned to leave. You can do this. I want to find my spaceship and leave here. Swoosh. Kara moved to the courtyard and flew into the sky, accompanied by a sonic boom, and quickly disappeared into the sky. She just left like that? Azu asked in disbelief. Do you still want to keep her? Peter looked at Zu and said, have you forgotten the scene of you four being beaten by her during the day? No, this is not a beating. She lost, Dad. If she hadn't run away, we would have caught her. It was just a little bit. Zu's mood became cheerful when he learned that Kara was not Peter's daughter. As long as the other party did not compete with him for the inheritance of the farm, she would not be his enemy. Clark, are you really not going with your cousin? Zu urged Clark. Maybe you can rebuild your home and make Krypton great again. My home is here. Wherever the Godfather goes, I will go, Clark said unhappily. Boom. A few minutes later, Kara landed near the Westover Dam. Her spaceship landed here. After the flood of the dam, the spaceship was washed out and she woke up from the hibernation chamber. The next day after she woke up, she went out to check the environment of the planet. When she returned, the spaceship was gone. Standing on the dam, Kara's cape word. Peter's words to her kept echoing in her mind. I must find it. Krypton cannot be destroyed. Whispering to herself, Kara suddenly jumped down and landed at the place where her spaceship disappeared. Suddenly, a silver sphere flew towards her at lightning speed and stopped in front of her. Kara raised her fist and prepared to attack. Unexpectedly, the silver sphere suddenly cast a projection. A man in a suit appeared in the projection. Hi, I'm Simon Digu. Nice to meet you. The man in the suit in the projection greeted Kara. Please forgive me for using a holographic image. If possible, I will try not to stay on the surface of the Earth. Kara looked at the holographic image in front of her and asked the other party, did he send you? She thought the other party was sent by Peter. Him? I'm not sent by someone, the man in the suit said to her. My job is to observe the starry sky. I have reached an agreement with the governments of various countries to track and recover everything that falls to the Earth, whether it is a meteorite the size of a golf ball or a Supergirl wearing long boots. Kara asked him vigilantly, what do you want to do? You came back to find this, right? Do you think it may still be in the crater? Simon Digu's hand showed a holographic projection of a spaceship. Don't worry, it's not gone. It's in my hand. I will keep it safe. If you want to get it, come with me, Alice. Let's play the little white rabbit game. Whoosh, the moment the projection disappeared, the white silver ball quickly flew into the sky. Supergirl hesitated for a moment and quickly chased it into the sky. Chapter 231 Azu, can your cousin marry my father? Outer space orbit. Supergirl Kara looked at the space station in front of her in shock. The huge space station stretched across the outer space, giving her an incredible feeling. The silver ball floating next to her said to her, some people regard it as a thorn in everyone's eyes, while others call it the last hope of mankind in the future in space. I call it home. Kara, led by the silver ball, flew towards an entrance of the space station. As a door of the space station opened, Kara entered the interior of the space station. But the moment she entered the space station, the silver ball disappeared directly in front of her eyes and flew away. Standing in the wide corridor of the space station, Kara looked at the surrounding environment. She didn't know why the other party lured her here. But she guessed that the other party must have bad intentions. But for the sake of her own spaceship, she could only take the risk to rush over. In Kara's sight, countless butterflies suddenly emerged in the corridor. Dark red tiny metal creatures flew towards her in an overwhelming manner. Curious, Kara stretched out her hand and let a beautiful butterfly land on the palm of her hand. However, what she didn't expect was that these beautiful dark red butterflies suddenly fired lasers at her. Kara, who was suddenly attacked, immediately felt a pain in her body. Then, countless lasers shot at her body like raindrops. On the other side, in the main station room of the space station, Simon Diggu was holding his hands in his suit pockets, watching the electronic butterfly attacking Kara through the monitor, showing an admiring look. It's incredible, the temperature has reached 1,000 degrees, continue to increase the power. He asked his men next to him to continue to increase the output power of the butterfly. Her body's surface temperature is rising exponentially, higher than the power emitted by the butterfly. The female assistant next to him reported to him, "Sir, her heat comes from her body is heating up." Kara, who was monitored by two people, was finally annoyed by these butterflies. She stretched out her hand, grabbed a butterfly flying in the air, and crushed it. At the same time, lasers shot out of her eyes, shooting down all the metal butterflies flying in the air. Simon Diggu looked at Kara's great power, his eyes flashing with a strange light. "It's a miracle, she is like a living sun." The female assistant suggested to her, "Sir, if the temperature continues to rise, the structure of our space station itself may not be intact." "Okay, recall the butterfly." Simon Diggu looked at Kara in the corridor and said to the female assistant with interest, "It's incredible. It only took a few seconds for her body to cool down. Next, we should raise the threshold and release the brain body, but the brain body is still in the experimental stage, and the logarithm of the basic polymer is not yet." The female assistant thought it was not safe to release the brain body now, but before she finished speaking, she was interrupted by Simon Diggu. "I am the boss here now, and I will bear all the risks. The brain body is a newly developed experimental body in the space station. This humanoid experimental body is made of some powerful polymer. It not only has powerful strength, but also can dissolve and absorb all substances." Seeing her boss's firm attitude, the female assistant no longer insisted and had to release the brain body. Bang! 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 A tall, translucent humanoid object appeared at one end of the corridor and walked towards Kara. The translucent body of the brain body was covered with blood vessels, and one look at it would make people's SAM value drop wildly. "What is this?" Kara was shocked when she saw the brain body that suddenly appeared. She didn't expect to see such a monster here. Bang! The brain body's arm grabbed her. Kara reacted immediately and dodged backwards. Unexpectedly, the brain body's arm suddenly stretched out, grabbed her arm in an instant, and then absorbed it. Kara, who was terrified, hurriedly pulled back and pulled it out. In the main station room, Simon Diggu looked at the brain body fighting with Kara, and his cell phone suddenly rang. He picked up the phone and said to the President of the United States on the other end of the phone impatiently, "You ask what we are doing? We are conducting a very important product test." Although the person on the other end of the phone was the President of the United States, he did not give face at all. "We have signed a cooperation agreement. I have given you guys enough money. In return, I only want anything that falls on your territory, unless you pay for tracking and recovery out of your own pocket." His tone was full of seriousness. "When the government gives up its interest in the outer layer, the results of any of our efforts no longer belong to you. The US government in the DC world has given up the development of the aerospace industry. Therefore, similar aerospace industries have been handed over to private enterprises. Simon Diggu's company has been committed to outer space exploration since the injection of funds. Simon Diggu, who has always been ambitious, successfully built a space station in outer space 4 years ago to intercept and discover objects falling to the Earth from outer space. 3 years ago, the spacecraft that Kara was riding was washed out of the dam. Simon Diggu's company discovered the spacecraft and recovered it. "Oh my god, this guy is so annoying." After complaining about the US president to the female assistant, Simon Diggu handed the phone to the assistant. At this time, Kara's battle with the brain body has come to an end. Kara roared and punched the other party against the wall of the space station. With a bang, the brain slid down the wall and fell to the ground. The brain instinctively made a strange sound, as if to express its pain. "You monster!" Looking at the disgusting brain, Kara couldn't help but curse. She quickly stepped forward and threw another punch, blasting the other party out of the space capsule. With a bang, as the capsule was broken, the pressure in the space station quickly became unbalanced. Ignoring the influence of the space environment, Kara activated her perspective eyes and soon found her spaceship in the space station. Boom! Directly crashing through several layers of the space station, Kara flew straight into a space station cabin. Looking at the spaceship placed in the middle, she immediately couldn't wait to reach out and touch it. As a result, she felt uncomfortable the moment she touched it. She looked at her hand touching the spaceship in astonishment and found that it was stained with the green solution. The green kryptonite solution quickly invaded her body. Kara screamed and immediately fell to the ground with powerlessness. Green hideous marks appeared on her face, and she made painful sounds. Behind her, Simon Diggory slowly walked towards her. Please don't punch through the wall anymore, okay? My emergency decompression chamber is running out of space, Simon Diggory said as he walked in front of her. Looking at the painful Kara, he lowered his head and said, It's fascinating. We found something leaking from your spacecraft. It's a fuel. We guessed that this fuel should have an effect on you. It seems that our guess is correct, but don't worry, we will take good care of you. At this time, Peter didn't know that Supergirl was captured by the villain again. Now he is meeting with the 4 people of Azu. If there is a next time, John, Clark, Star-Lord, and Loki, what you encounter in your dream will not be so simple, Peter said to the few people. At least you won't wake up from the dream so easily. I know, Dad. Star-Lord admitted his mistake very sincerely. Dad, next time before I fight, I will definitely not fight at home, I will definitely change the place. Peter, is that what I mean? Glancing at Star-Lord, Peter asked him unhappily, where do you want to fight? Star-Lord thought for a moment and said to Peter, if it's school, I think it's good. Peter was speechless instantly. Very good, you not only destroyed the family, but also want to destroy the school? You said you knew you were wrong, but I think you still don't recognize your own problems. Star-Lord, come here, Peter said to him earnestly, come here, to reward you for your understanding, I will give you something. What is it? Dad, Star-Lord came up curiously, and asked Peter excitedly in anticipation. Dad will give you a big dick. Half an hour later. After the family meeting, Star-Lord walked into the room dejectedly. Although he didn't get Peter's big dick, he was scolded by Peter again. Unlike Star-Lord, Clark's mood at this time was very complicated. He didn't expect that he had a Kryptonian sister. The other party didn't seem to have any feelings for the Earth. Clark, who was about to enter the room, was stopped by Azu. What's wrong, John? Turning around, Clark saw Azu walking towards him. I want to discuss something with you, Azu coughed and said with an unnatural expression. Of course, Clark nodded and let Azu enter his room. What do you want to discuss, Azu? Clark asked the other party. It's like this, you Kryptonians are immortal, right? Clark pondered for a moment, not knowing why the other party asked this question. Your cousin has been sleeping for more than 10 years, and now she still looks like a young girl, which shows that you Kryptonians have the ability to delay aging, Azu said seriously, since your cousin and father are immortal, and they are both in their 40s, maybe, your cousin marrying your father can actually be considered. What? Clark looked at Azu in shock. You actually want the godfather to marry my sister? Not to mention whether the person involved will agree? Even if they agree, how will the seniority be calculated in the future? Clark fell into a mess here, and Azu began to consider the feasibility of the plan. Kryptonians should be reproductively isolated from Earthlings. Even if my father marries Kara, they will not have children, and no children will be born in the future to threaten my inheritance rights to the farm. Chapter 232, Azu's Theory of Reproductive Isolation, Peter's Space Rescue. No, impossible. Clark immediately rejected this proposal that sounded extremely absurd. She is my cousin. If she marries Dad, how can I call him godfather in the future? Seeing Clark's big reaction, Azu felt guilty. He had bad intentions and wanted Peter to deal with Kara in the future, so he came up with such a bad idea. Now seeing Clark's big reaction, he immediately stopped. Well, this is just a suggestion, an idea of my own. Azu forced a fake smile on his face and said to Clark, I saw that Dad has been alone all the time. You know, men always have to cough that. Clark didn't know what Azu meant by that. What is that you are talking about? Nothing. Azu pinched his waist and puffed up his cheeks and said unnaturally. I have to go. Good night, Clark. After leaving Clark's room, Azu went into his own room. Sitting at the desk, he took a few deep breaths and opened the drawer. A large-scale photo magazine of a mature female star in the drawer appeared in front of him. The photo of the female star with a hot body caught his eyes, which made Azu's heart fluctuate a little. After looking around unnaturally, Azu picked up the magazine with a guilty conscience and flipped through it. Considering that Clark and his father both have the ability to see through, Azu dared not do anything excessive and could only enjoy the sight. John, I remember, With a bang, the door was pushed open. As a result, Azu was caught by Clark himself while reading an unhealthy magazine. The air was silent, and the two looked at each other for a moment. Azu said to Clark in shame and anger, "What's wrong with you?" "Clark, you should knock on the door." Sorry, I should knock on the door." Clark apologized to the other party awkwardly. I didn't mean it." He now knew what that Azu was talking about. "John, I will definitely keep it a secret for you. I mean, just pretend that I didn't see it." Clark vowed to keep it a secret for Azu. The next day, early in the morning, Peter glanced at Azu while eating. Clark had already told him that Azu wanted to find a stepmother for him. He didn't expect Azu to list Supergirl as a candidate. Although the idea was ridiculous, the starting point was good. At this time, Peter didn't know that Azu had already determined the fact that there was reproductive isolation between Kryptonians and Earthlings. "Clark, are you familiar with Chloe?" Peter suddenly asked Clark. "Are you talking about Chloe Sullivan?" Clark didn't know why Peter asked about Chloe. "Yes, Chloe is my friend, Godfather. We are very familiar with each other." Peter nodded. "I saw a report about her before, about the alien spacecraft at Westover Dam." Putting down the cutlery in his hand, Peter asked him, "Can you ask her, are there any photos of the report about the spacecraft at Westover Dam?" Clark nodded. "Okay, Godfather, I'll go over and ask Chloe as soon as I have finished breakfast." Half an hour later, Peter, Clark and Azu came to the vicinity of Westover Dam. Peter took the photo of the suspected spaceship he got from Chloe, looked at the photo and then looked at the dried-up dam. "Godfather, why do we come here? Didn't Kara's spaceship disappear here?" Clark asked Peter in confusion. Peter put down the photo and asked Clark and Azu, "Who do you think took the spaceship away?" "Probably the federal government," Clark said uncertainly. Peter nodded. "It's very likely that if the spaceship fell into the hands of the government, we must snatch it back. It can't fall into the hands of the government, let alone the hands of ambitious people." Azu agreed with Peter. "I agree, Dad, it can only belong to us." "Peter, you kid is too straightforward." Peter coughed and said to the two of them, "No matter what, we have to get it back." Clark took a deep breath and was about to say something when he suddenly noticed a faint light flashing before his eyes. Squatting down, Clark picked up a piece of metal material from the ground. The special metal material made his eyes light up. He handed the material to Peter. "Godfather, this should be a fragment of the spacecraft." Peter took the material and stared at the bright silver material. "It's a pity that there's only this piece." He sighed slightly and looked up at the sky. "Godfather, don't you know where Kara went? Maybe we can talk to her, she may know some clues." Clark asked Peter in confusion. "No, she is Supergirl, with speed and endurance that are incomparable to ordinary people. I can't always find her trace." Peter shook his head and said to the two, "Unless she can dream, I left a mark on her. If she dreams, I will enter her dream." Peter looked at Clark. "Clark, do Kryptonians dream?" Clark was stunned for a moment. "I don't know, but I have dreamed before. I think Kara should dream too." Late at night. Space station. Kara, who was immersed in a sealed glass container filled with kryptonite solution, was motionless with a green light in her eyes. At this time, Kara had fallen into deep sleep. A vivid dream about the past played out in her mind. Kara's father handed her the Supergirl uniform. "This is a gift I prepared for you, family emblem." Surprised, Kara took the uniform, but soon remembered something. "But my mother won't let me wear it. I can't wear it until I pass the exam," her father said to her dotingly. "Your mother won't know." Kara happily changed into the clothes and showed them to her father. "Well, what do you think, Dad?" Her father smiled and said, "It's really beautiful, but the boots are a little tight." Kara suddenly felt a little uncomfortable as she spoke. She covered her forehead with her hand. "Dad, I seem to be a little wrong." Staggering, she held her father's arm. "I suddenly became very weak. Sorry, but I have to do this." Kara's father sighed slightly and said to her, "Krypton is gradually dying." "Kara, what?" "It's the last moment. I don't have much time, Kara. I can only save you." Kara's father said reluctantly, "Sorry, I have no choice." He hugged Kara, who fell to the ground. "Just fall asleep like this. When you wake up, everything will be fine." Kara fell into her father's arms, powerless. No, don't do this. If you love me, Dad, you won't do this." The father holding Kara closed his eyes, tears streaming down his eyes, stroking his daughter's hair and said, "I do this because I love you." He carried Kara, who was powerless to resist, into the cabin. Kara watched her father send her away, and struggled to get up. but felt powerless. Just when she was extremely anxious, footsteps sounded, and a figure walked out from behind her father. In her astonished eyes, Peter appeared from the shadows and walked slowly towards her. Kara was shocked. She didn't expect Peter to appear suddenly. "You?" Kara made an unbelievable sound. "Are you surprised?" Peter walked to the side of the spaceship, stretched out his hand, grabbed her arm and pulled her out. The father beside her disappeared immediately. "This is your dream world, the nightmare you least want to touch," Peter said to Kara. "It's not reality, it's not a real memory, so don't be surprised to see me here." Kara suddenly found that she could speak. She touched her throat and asked Peter in doubt, "Why did you appear in my dream?" "Maybe it's because we had a conflict before, so it's such a coincidence." Kara didn't believe Peter's explanation. Although she always felt that Peter was full of mysteries, she didn't expect that he had such an ability. Entering other people's dreams, she had never heard of anyone being able to do it. "Are you really not a Kryptonian?" she swallowed and asked Peter. "Of course not, at least I'm not afraid of meteorites." Kara nodded a little disappointedly, and wanted to ask something else. But she suddenly remembered that she was captured by the group of people in the space station in the real world. "Oh no." Kara grabbed her hair with her hands and said to Peter, "I was captured by a man named Simon Digu in the space station." Then she quickly told Peter about her previous experience. Simon Digu. After listening to Kara's story, Peter nodded slowly. "Searching for any objects that fell to the ground in space, doesn't that mean that the babies that came from the meteor shower should also belong to them?" "Don't worry," Peter said to the other party, "I have arrived at the space station." Kara, what? After a moment, she suddenly felt that the world in front of her disappeared, and boundless darkness surged over. The next second she woke up from her dream. After waking up, she saw that she was wrapped in a cloth that barely covered her key parts, and was soaked in a cylindrical glass container. The kryptonite solution around her made her unable to exert her strength, and she could only knock on the glass in vain. Just when she fell into despair, she suddenly found that Peter was standing outside at some point. Peter, who was teleported to the space station with a sandbag, stretched out his hand, and the rune was instantly engraved on the container. Then with a bang, the glass jar shattered, and water gushed out directly. Kara was also washed out by the water and fell to the ground coughing. Peter was not polite and picked up the girl who was weak and unable to walk. Chapter 233. Please call me Kara Patrick. With her snow-white skin exposed, Kara, who was powerless, was held by Peter and walked forward. "Am I still dreaming now?" Kara panted slightly and looked up at Peter and asked. "Probably not, I guess so. My body wouldn't be so heavy in a dream." She was held by Peter and murmured in a low voice, "I must be a fool, and I was easily caught by others." After saying this, she didn't know how to talk to Peter. She was still shouting and killing in the farm yesterday, but now she was rescued by the other party. This reversal made her not know how to face Peter. "No matter what, I have to say, thank you." "Thank you." Kara looked away and thanked Peter. "I thought you were a bad person. I didn't say I was a good person. And if you weren't Clark's cousin, I'm afraid I wouldn't meddle in other people's business." Peter looked down at the indescribable thing on the other's chest and looked away calmly. Not noticing Peter's little action, she exhaled. After calming down, she asked Peter, "Why do you know about Krypton?" "You seem to know more about Krypton than I do." Peter bowed his head and said to her, "Maybe I am also an alien. Are you Zod's man?" "No." "Why do you think I am General Zod's man?" "Father once said that Zod once created a new type of warrior." "I thought you were that new type of warrior at first. For example, you are not afraid of kryptonite," Kara whispered to Peter, "but now I know you won't, because if you are that new type of warrior, you will definitely not enter my dream." "Kryptonians don't have this ability." Peter looked at her in surprise. He didn't expect that Supergirl, who seemed to have a bad temper and self-evaluated as a stupid, would think so rationally. Holding Kara, Peter walked forward a few steps, and the automatic door in front was opened. Simon Digu came over with a group of guards holding guns. The other party, who was dressed in a suit, was stunned when he saw Peter. "Who are you?" Simon Digu asked with a frown. He had never noticed that there was suddenly a stranger in the space station, and the other party was planning to rescue the woman in front of him. "Come and take care of your people." Peter held Kara and did not waste time talking to him. He activated the power of the ruby. The guards whose minds were affected by the ruby were stunned for a moment, and then they started to kill each other. Bang! 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 The sound of bullets rang out. The guards who raised their guns and shot at each other scared Simon Digu. The bullet passed through his back, blood splattered, and screams resounded in the space station. Kara, who was held by Peter, was also startled. She looked at Peter, and she calmed herself down with a very uneasy heart. She said to Peter, "Put me down, I can fight." "Are you sure?" Peter asked the other party, who was panting slightly. He was afraid that this Kryptonian Shane would be captured by the enemy if he came down. "Of course, these idiots don't understand that only kryptonite can hurt me, and after the pain disappears, I feel stronger." After being put down by Peter, Kara, who was barefoot and had long legs, gritted her teeth and rushed towards the guards, who came one after another. Feeling the power given to her by the yellow sun, she felt that every cell in her body began to be full of vitality. Kara rushed towards the nearest guard. The guard immediately raised his arms and blocked in front of her. A whip kick like lightning hit his arms, just like a hammer hitting him. The guard's arm was instantly broken, and he was knocked out and fell into the crowd with a bang. After killing a guard, Kara kicked the guard with a high kick, causing the guard to roll back and retreat. The guard who came over raised his gun and wanted to shoot her, but was directly knocked away by Kara, who rushed over. Swoosh! Kara flew up, knocked over a group of guards, and flew forward at lightning speed. She wanted to get her uniform back. After flying out of a cabin, Kara met the brain body again. Enduring the discomfort of her body, Kara flew towards the opponent and smashed her fist in the air, hitting the opponent's face. The fist that directly attacked the face was blocked by the brain body. Kara immediately felt a force shaking her arm, and at the same time, the opponent's arm wrapped around her fist like sticky mucus. Concentrating all her strength on her knees, Kara raised her knees and rammed the opponent with a roar. With a bang, the brain body was smashed to the ground. Kara immediately leaned forward, hugged the opponent's arm, concentrated all her strength, roared, and threw the opponent out. Crash! The bulkhead was completely smashed by the brain body, and the fragments burst out, and a strong air pressure difference was immediately generated. With hot eyes shooting out, the lasers shot out of Kara's eyes hit the opponent further. After knocking down the guards and the brain body one after another, Kara soon got her own battlesuit. After changing into the battlesuit, she immediately returned to Peter without stopping. When she returned to the scene, in her sight, only Peter and Simon Diggory were standing. Simon Diggory gasped and looked at Peter with disbelief, and his previous calmness disappeared. He had never seen a terrible monster like Peter. Just using his eyes, he made his men kill each other. Is this guy a devil? Seeing Peter take a step towards him, Simon Diggory quickly took a step back and took out a prismatic crystal stone emitting red light from his back. Wait, I have what you need. Seeing what the other party took out, Kara shouted, "That's sunstone." Peter frowned. What sunstone? A special mineral on Krypton that can be used as a building material or to store information. It must be a relic left to me by my father, Kara explained to Peter anxiously in a low voice. Seeing that Kara seemed to care about sunstone, Simon Diggory's confidence also recovered a little. He said to Peter and the others, "I knew it was alien technology when I saw it. Now if you don't calm down, I will smash it." He took a step back and continued to say to Peter, "We can make a deal. I don't want to embarrass you, and you don't have to hurt me. I can return it to you as long as we trade fairly." "What deal?" Peter asked him with interest. Simon Diggory looked at Kara and asked her, "Just give me 1 drop of your blood." 1 drop of blood? Peter shook his head and said to the other party, "Although Kara bleeds once a month, I don't think she will give you even 1 drop of blood, Kara." As soon as Peter finished speaking, he launched the power of the ruby on the other party. Simon Diggory, whose eyes flashed with a red light and whose mind was controlled by Peter, was immediately stunned. After a moment of confusion, he walked towards Peter and handed Peter the sunstone. Peter, who got the sunstone, looked at it and didn't find anything special. So he returned it directly to Kara. "Did you give it to me?" Kara, who was a little unresponsive, asked Peter in surprise. "Of course, I think there must be something your father said to you in it, and it has no use in my hands," Peter said in a casual tone. "This thing is not of much value to him." Kara held the sunstone and looked at Peter. Suddenly, she felt that the man in front of her was not only not annoying, but also touched her a little. "Thank you," she whispered to Peter. Peter didn't notice Kara's eyes. He turned to Simon Diggory and asked, "You are British, right?" "Yes, I am British. I have several investment companies and high-tech companies in the United States and Europe. I mainly engage in new materials and space research. I am also a famous British billionaire." Peter nodded and continued to ask him, You are building a space station to recover objects that fall to the Earth from outer space, right? Yes, we have not only established a cooperative relationship with the US government to recover and track any suspicious objects that fall to the ground from space, but also established cooperative relationships with European and Asian countries. We hope to discover new materials and new technologies. Very good, Peter gave him an order. From now on, you serve me. If you find anything valuable that falls to the Earth from outer space, report it to me immediately. Every time a meteor shower comes, he is worried that he will not be able to find the baby in the first time. If there's this space station, there is no need to worry about the arrival of babies in the future. And considering that this is the DC world, there will be alien objects coming to the Earth from time to time. With a space station, it is equivalent to having a detection station for alien objects. In the future, maybe a demon child will come from the sky, and you can find it in advance. Yes, Master, Simon Diggory nodded respectfully to Peter. After solving all the problems, Peter cast his eyes on Kara beside him and said to the stunned Kara, "Let's go." The next day, early in the morning, after Clark went downstairs, he stared blankly at Kara, who appeared on the farm and sat on the dining table. Kara, he didn't expect that this woman who called herself his cousin suddenly appeared in front of him. "Hey, Carl, I'm Clark." "Okay, Clark, good morning. Why are you here? I mean, aren't you here for revenge? Because the few of them had a fight before, Clark is now worried about the other party's revenge." "No, actually, I forgive you." Kara glanced at Peter, who was pretending to be stupid next to her, and said, "I forgot to tell you, Clark, I also have an Earth name now." "What name?" Clark asked curiously. "Kara Patrick." Peter was drinking coffee, and when he heard the new name of Supergirl, he almost spit out the coffee in his mouth. "I forgot to say, Happy Mid-Autumn Festival, dear readers. I hope everyone will always smile, and good luck will come naturally." Chapter 234, Kidnapping. Clark lost her best friend and her love. Seeing Peter's weird expression, Kara smiled awkwardly at Clark. "Okay, I'm kidding." Clark was silent for a moment, secretly glanced at the Godfather, and thought to himself that you don't seem to be joking. For some reason, he always felt that something must have happened between the Godfather and Kara that he didn't know about. Stroking his chin, Clark suddenly felt uneasy. Could it be that the cousin really became the godmother? Just when Clark was doubting his life, Azu, Star-Lord and Loki came down from upstairs. Seeing Kara sitting in the living room, the expressions of several people were as shocked as Clark. "Are you here to cause trouble?" Azu immediately asked the other party vigilantly. The previous battle with Kara had caused him a lot of losses, so he still felt resentful. Now seeing Kara sitting in the living room, he subconsciously thought that the other party was here for revenge. "No, I forgive you." Kara generously said that she forgave Azu and the others. "Forgive? It was you who demolished my farm. I think you should apologize." Azu said that you were rebelling against Cheyenne Gang. "And you almost demolished a cow shed," he added. "The cause of the incident is that you attacked me without authorization." Kara stood up and said to Azu unhappily, "You attributed the disappearance of the kindergarten children to me, but in fact, it had nothing to do with me." Kara's impression of Azu was not very good. She always felt that this guy who had exactly the same abilities as herself was not only irritable but also indiscriminate. He was like another copy of herself, but even more hateful. If it weren't for the fact that the other party was Peter's son, she would have beaten him up because of her temper. Azu wanted to continue arguing for a few more words, but after looking at Peter, she decided to forget it for the sake of her father. Kara saw that Peter had been looking at the ash tree in the courtyard, and asked him puzzledly, "What are you looking at?" "Nothing." Peter shook his head and retracted his gaze. The world tree seemed to have changed recently, and a vigorous vitality was nurtured in it. He suspected that a new world or life species would be generated in the world tree. Turning his thoughts back from the world tree, he talked about the disappearance of Smallville's children. Speaking of which, Peter frowned slightly and asked Kara, "Don't you know the truth about the disappearance of children?" "Of course I don't know." Kara pinched her waist and said unhappily, "When I appeared near the kindergarten, I just wanted to confirm whether Clark was there. I am not interested in kidnapping children." Peter nodded and fell into deep thought. In the afternoon, Clark and Chloe went to the interview together. "You said you suddenly have a cousin?" Chloe asked him in surprise. "Yes, but she is a distant cousin." Clark shrugged his shoulders and did not tell the truth to the other party. "But I have never heard you mention it. You asked me for information about spacecraft before." Could it be that your cousin is an alien? Clark was stunned when he heard the other party say that his cousin was an alien. I'm kidding, Chloe smiled and said to him, but there is one thing I have a question. You said she is your cousin, didn't you adopt her? Oh, it's my father's cousin. Clark felt more and more uneasy. He felt that if Chloe continued to ask, he would definitely be exposed. Well, then she is a cousin who is not related by blood. I thought she was your cousin on the godfather's side, Chloe said while checking the interview tools in her bag. Then she suddenly remembered something and said to Clark, but it should be unlikely. Your godfather looks very young and mysterious. I guess he has no relatives, really, of course, if you don't tell me his age, I'm afraid no one can guess that he is your godfather. If he goes out on a date, I think he will be able to fool many high school girls, like me. Clark listened to Chloe's bold words and didn't know how to respond. He found that Chloe's interest in her good friend was not as great as her godfather. As the two talked, they quickly rushed to the vicinity of a kindergarten. Chloe interviewed the kindergarten teachers for a special interview of the kindergarten children of Smallville who had recently disappeared. Soon the two met the person they were going to interview. The female teacher was sitting on a park bench under a red maple tree. The leaves above her had trembled and fell, and squirrels jumped up and down between the branches. When she saw Clark and Chloe approaching, she stood up and stretched out a hand. Hello, Miss Weiss. Chloe stretched out her hand to shake hands with the other party. Hello, you are Chloe, right? Yes, I am Chloe, the editor-in-chief of the Touch. Miss Weiss, you don't look young enough to be a teacher, the woman smiled. People here always tell me that I look like a teacher. Then we may have some differences, but I'm glad you accepted our interview. Chloe and Clark sat down and began to interview the female teacher. But the interview was soon interrupted by a little girl yelling. Chloe and Clark turned around and saw a girl in the art class, a small, freckled red-haired girl who looked about 4 or 5 years old. The girl held the sketchbook in the same way as an invincible Viking pirate holding his weapon. Then she used the sketchbook to slap another girl violently. The other girl, a smaller girl with blonde hair and blue eyes, screamed and staggered to the ground. Then, there was only a bunch of madly waving limbs and macy tangled hair, and a big brown shoe spun into the air. Clark and Chloe looked at each other and fell into silence when they saw this scene. Your kindergarten is really friendly and harmonious. Just as Clark complained about the tough style of study in the kindergarten, the female teacher quickly stood up, gave the two of them an apologetic look, and then went back to educate the girls who fought. After dealing with the girls' fight, the female teacher continued to come back for interviews. Ms. Weiss, can you tell me how Kristen disappeared? Chloe asked. Kristen was one of the 2 girls who disappeared in the kindergarten. Okay, speaking of Kristen's disappearance, the female teacher showed a trace of sadness on her face. On the first, I found a blonde woman wandering at the door. She wanted to get close to the children, but when she saw me at the scene, she didn't come over. She just looked at me for a few times and left. After lunch break, Kristen disappeared. We searched many places but didn't find her. After listening to the other party's story, Chloe frowned and asked her, you mean, the criminal is very likely to be the woman wanted before? Yes, I guess it's her. The police also said that she is a big suspect. The female teacher agreed that a blonde was the suspect. Clark, who was standing next to her, frowned. He knew that the blonde they were talking about was Kara. But she didn't think Kara would be the murderer. Kara is a Kryptonian, and although she doesn't have deep feelings for Earth, she has absolutely no reason to do this. He didn't believe that Kara would be such a person. Moreover, Clark always felt that the woman in front of him was lying, and her eyes and heartbeat were obviously abnormal. He was hesitant to speak, but in the end he said nothing. In the evening, after finishing the interview, Chloe returned home and suddenly found that she had forgotten her spare recorder in the kindergarten. Chloe looked up at the clock and felt that there was still time, so she decided to go to the kindergarten to retrieve the recorder. When she left home, she happened to meet Lana riding a horse on the road. Hey, Lana. Seeing Lana, Chloe made a surprised voice. Chloe, why are you here? Lana, who was riding Tyson for a stroll, quickly dismounted and greeted her bestie. Chloe shrugged, I'm going to Brown Kindergarten, and I forgot my recorder there. Would you like to come with me? Maybe I can ride Tyson. Of course, Lana handed the reins of Tyson to Chloe, but you have to be careful. Although Tyson has a good personality, he can be dangerous when frightened. No problem, my riding skills are pretty good. Chloe mounted the horse confidently. As the two talked, they walked towards Brown Kindergarten. As the sun set, the dark night fell. Chloe walked to the door of the kindergarten and called the female teacher. The call was dialed several times, but it could not be connected. She frowned, looked up at the kindergarten, and found that the door was ajar. Maybe Miss Wise is in. As she said that, she pushed open the door and walked in. There was no one in the kindergarten, and the entire spacious room was silent. Lana followed Chloe in. She frowned slightly, feeling that the atmosphere here was a little weird. The two were looking at the surrounding environment, when they suddenly heard a dull sound coming from the next room. Following the sound, the two entered the next room. In the room where sundries were placed, there was an underground secret room in the corner of the wall. The two looked at each other and saw the confusion in each other's eyes. Is there an underground secret room in the kindergarten? I think we should leave here immediately, Lana made her suggestion with some fear. Although she didn't know why there was an underground secret room in the kindergarten. But a mysterious feeling told her that there must be something evil in it. Well, I think so too. Although being a reporter drives me to explore further, I am more concerned about my own safety now. Chloe was about to step back. Unexpectedly, a dark shadow appeared in front of them the moment they turned around. Before they could shout out, their mouths and noses were covered. Lana and Chloe instantly felt sleepy. The two finally couldn't hold on and fell to the ground with a plop. Chapter 235 The Birth of a New World, Loki's Ambition. Lana's tongue was full of the taste of dust and dirt. She felt that she had a splitting headache. Covering her forehead, she felt her hearing wandering wildly between oscillation and pulse. Lana put her hands under her body and felt waves of pain in her palms. Taking a deep breath, she turned her head, her cheek pressed against the cold dust, trying to see clearly where she was. Looking up, Lana finally saw the brick and stone walls, surrounded by a dark underground environment that could not be seen clearly. Lana guessed that she should be in some kind of cellar. She turned her head and looked to the other side, and then she saw a girl next to her. The girl, who was not very old, curled up and leaned against an empty space on the wall. Her head drooped and leaned on her knees, her pale body trembling. It seemed that some of the wounds were newly formed, and some were not. Her hair was dirty and messy, stained with sweat, wet and smooth. Lana took a deep breath, slowly stood up, and moved to the other side. Although she didn't know where this was, there was no doubt that she should have been kidnapped. She looked up at the opposite side. The paint on the wall was peeling off in strips, and the door at the top was closed. Hey, Lana said to the other party, her voice seemed weak, who are you? Can you speak? The little girl looked up at her, but soon lowered her head again. Where are we? Lana asked the other party. How long have you been here? The other party still said nothing. Do you know what happened? The girl looked at her, but the other party's eyes were dull and empty, as if she had forgotten how to speak. Lana saw that the other party didn't speak, so she could only cover her forehead helplessly. A dizzy spell, pain stirred in her head, and she almost fell to the ground again. Lana simply checked her physical condition, no broken ribs, no additional injuries, just felt a special headache. After taking a few deep breaths, just when Lana wanted to move forward, a voice came. Lana, are you there? Chloe's voice came to her. Chloe, Lana shouted to her in surprise, where are you? I'm behind you, but the situation is a bit bad. I feel like my head is about to split open. Chloe made a muffled sound. Are we kidnapped just like this? It should be. Chloe's unhappy voice came over. There are kidnappers in the kindergarten in Smallville, but as a reporter, I'm at the first scene, Chloe said as she looked at the little girl curled up in the corner. Looking at the familiar girl, she made a surprised sound. This seems to be the missing Christine. Lana asked Chloe in surprise. Do you know her? Yes, she should be the child who disappeared a few days ago. Why is she here? Chloe touched her painful forehead and suddenly thought of the worst-case scenario. It's Miss Weiss. It must be her. She immediately locked the suspect on the female teacher. Ms. Weiss, she's the principal of this kindergarten. I just interviewed her during the day. I didn't expect that she was the murderer. She's the only one who could build the underground secret room here. Chloe took a deep breath. Do you have a cell phone on you, Lana? No, it should have been taken away. Chloe touched her body, and her cell phone was gone. Well, this is the worst situation now. The other party might want to kill us to silence us. Then Lana's voice was trembling. What should we do? Escape from here? Chloe shrugged her shoulders and said to Lana, a more specific way is to move, observe, and search. Lana nodded. Although her body was a little unable to support herself, She still used all her strength to stand up and explore the surrounding environment. Standing on the stairs, Lana looked out through the light of the crack in the door. She saw the exit there. Lana was sure that the door she saw must be a way out. The size of this cellar gave her sufficient reason to judge that this was a small house with at most one room, so the door she saw must be the door to the outside world. Just as the two were moving, they suddenly heard a sound from above. The sound of keys creaking was heard. Lana hurried down the stairs. In the process, she almost slipped. She grabbed a handful of soil from the ground and tried to keep herself stable. She was about to do an almost impossible task. Due to excessive tension, her whole body was like a boat struggling and drifting in a storm. Chloe picked up a short cement slab at hand and prepared to hit the person who came down with a solid brick. At the same time, Padrick Farm. Clark kept calling Chloe, but he couldn't get through. Feeling a little anxious, he said hello to Peter and planned to go to Chloe's house. Peter was about to say a few words of comfort to Clark when the phone rang. The caller was Officer Chandler. Peter talked to the other party for a few words and hung up the phone. "What's wrong, Dad?" Azu saw Peter frowning and asked him. Peter said to him, "The murderer of the missing kindergarten children has been found. It's Wiz Crook from Brown Kindergarten. She is connected to a notorious child and women trafficking organization. The police found their transaction records from a month ago." Teacher Wiz. Clark was stunned when he heard the name. Wasn't this the teacher he and Chloe interviewed during the day? Kara, who was next to him, finally breathed a sigh of relief when she heard that the suspect had been identified. "Very good, it seems that my suspicion has finally been cleared." Peter was about to speak when the phone rang again. He picked up the phone and found that it was Neil. "Hello, this is Peter." "Neil, what's up?" Peter asked Neil. "Peter, Lana is missing." Neil told her about her niece's disappearance. "Don't be excited, Neil, what happened specifically?" Peter asked the excited Neil to calm down and explain to him what happened. Neil then told Peter about Lana accompanying Chloe to Brown Kindergarten. After listening to the other party's story, Peter quickly realized that the two of them must have encountered some danger. After all, Wiz Crook is the director of Brown Kindergarten. After hanging up the phone, Peter took Azu and Kara to Brown Kindergarten and the surrounding area to search for the two. Almost all the farm staff were out, leaving only Loki to guard the house. Lana and Chloe, who were being sought by everyone, were ready to attack anyone who entered the basement. But the result was that the two were quickly subdued. The two strong men easily subdued Lana and Chloe, tied them up, and locked them in the car. The two strong men, plus the female director, drove away from the town of Smallville. The car sped along the road. Lana, who was tied to the back seat of the SUV, looked at the scenery passing by outside the window, and then looked at Chloe, who was tied up with tape on her mouth. She took a deep breath and decided to fight to the death. Anyway, if she was kidnapped by the other party, she would definitely end up miserably. She glanced at the shocked Chloe and gave her a reassuring look. With her back against the car door, Lana's fingers groped for the door handle. Chloe realized what she was going to do and moved towards her to shield her body. A few minutes later, Lana just touched the handle, gritted her teeth, pushed open the car door and jumped out. Bang! Lana fell directly into the grass and rolled on it. Fortunately, she was lucky and crashed directly into the soft grass on the side of the road. Enduring the pain of being hit, Lana stood up with a dizzy head and immediately ran forward at the fastest speed. Blood was flowing on her forehead and her ankle was piercingly painful, but she kept running forward. The three kidnappers didn't expect Lana to jump out of the car, and they reacted after a few seconds. With a squeak, the brakes were stepped on, and two strong men jumped out of the car and prepared to chase Lana. But at the same time, Supergirl Kara also chased after her. Seeing the real culprit of kidnapping children, Kara was furious. Whoosh grabbed the other's collar and threw him forward. Bang! The two strong men fell heavily to the ground and rolled several meters along the ground. Chloe in the car was stunned by Kara, who looked like a god in the sky. She had discovered the biggest news of this century: a god descended in the sky. Lana, who was running forward, didn't know what was happening behind her. With her adrenaline soaring, she was almost out of breath when she suddenly found that Uncle Padrick's farm was not far ahead. With strength emerging in her heart, she gritted her teeth and continued to run forward. At the same time, Loki, who was on the farm, didn't know what was happening outside. Staring at the world tree in the yard, his brows were slightly frowned. Born in the world tree, He was very sensitive to the changes in the world tree. Before, there were only two worlds in the world tree, Muspelheim and Jotunheim. Now Loki vaguely felt that a new world was about to be born in the world tree. Is it Asgard? Or some other world? Loki made his own guesses while walking in front of the world tree. Just as he stared at the world tree intently, Lana, who was running all the way, finally ran to the farm. The moment she stepped into the farm, a strong and dazzling light suddenly burst out from the world tree. The space in front of the world tree was instantly surrounded by strong light. Lana, who had just run in for help, was instantly surrounded by this strong light. The white light emitted by the world tree healed her injuries. She and Loki were also pulled into the world tree. Chapter 236, Marvel World. Loki believes in Lana as his mother. Covering his aching forehead, Loki raised his head. The magnificent building towering into the sky suddenly broke into his sight. The vast and endless building gave him a majestic and sacred feeling. This is Asgard. Looking at the Asgard god court born in the world tree, Loki was extremely excited. He didn't expect that the Asgard god court would be born in the world tree. This is the most important place in the 9 realms, the core of the entire world tree. After owning Asgard, the world tree is no longer just the cold Jotunheim and the hot Muspelheim. It began to become a valuable small world. On the other side, Lana, who was pulled into Asgard, looked at the building in front of her in shock, and the whole person was completely dazed. She never thought that she would come to such a strange place. Wasn't she rushing to Padrick Farm for help? Where is this? Loki, Lana asked Loki, who was standing next to her. Asgard. Loki turned around and looked at the rainbow bridge in the distance, which was emitting dazzling brilliance. He said to Lana, "It is also the place where I will be crowned king in the future." Lana, "Why did I come here?" Lana calmed down and asked Loki. "I don't know. Maybe you are in the wrong place at the wrong time," Loki said to her in a good mood, "but don't worry, I will send you out. After all, you are Clark's girlfriend." "No, I am not," Lana immediately retorted to him. "Clark and I are just friends." "Really? You are so cruel, Lana. You will hurt the heart of an innocent boy by saying this." Lana looked at him speechlessly. "Hey, listen, Loki, I have to leave here. Chloe is waiting for me to save her." "Don't worry, Dad, Kara, Clark, Star-Lord, and Zoo are all out. I think there should be no one in Smallville that they can't find." Loki transformed into a young man, wearing a green robe, and walked towards the rainbow bridge in the distance. Lana knew that Chloe was temporarily safe, so she had to follow. When she walked onto the rainbow bridge, Lana was immediately shocked by the colorful rainbow bridge that exuded a magnificent atmosphere. What is this? The rainbow bridge, the shaking road to heaven, the road connecting Asgard and Midgard. But now, it can't do it. Loki stood on the rainbow bridge, feeling the breath of the entire newly born world. After taking a few deep breaths, he suddenly felt the message that the rainbow bridge conveyed to him. Loki, who was born from the world tree, had the same control over the entire world tree as Peter. He quickly understood the effect of the rainbow bridge at this time. The rainbow bridge does not connect Asgard and Midgard, but connects to another world, the world where the world tree itself is. Loki, who knew the effect of the rainbow bridge, was immediately excited. The rainbow bridge can connect to the world where the world tree itself is. Loki is quite familiar with the world of the world tree itself. He often dreams of himself in another world. There he is the son of King Odin and has been living in Asgard. Although he is the son of Odin, he realized too early that he was different from his brother and the people around him, which made him incompatible with his family. His father did not value him and favored his brother, and his brother was arrogant. Only his mother loved him very much and taught him all the magic she knew. It must be said that the self in another world is a complete tragedy. Odin has never been a good father. He is a hypocritical guy. He just kept him in captivity to use him one day. Loki whispered to himself. "What are you talking about?" I said. "Father is a good father. Although he has some problems, he is my favorite father." Loki smiled and said to Lana. Lana blinked in confusion, not understanding why Loki suddenly mentioned Peter. "I have an idea," Loki coughed. "Can you cooperate with me? I promise that after this is done, I will definitely send you out." "What is it?" Lana looked at Loki vigilantly. She knew that among the 3 children in Uncle Padrick's family, Loki was the worst. Moreover, the other party seemed to often use some magic of transformation to play pranks. "A small favor," Loki said, extending his hand to Lana. A green light shone on Lana, and then, in Lana's shocked eyes, She turned into another woman. From now on, you are my mother, Frigga. What? Before Lana could object, the rainbow bridge burst out with a brilliant force, rolling the two of them to another space world. Marvel World, Asgard. Loki used the rainbow bridge to avoid Helding's detection and entered the world of Asgard. Hiding behind the pillar, Loki eavesdropped on the conversation of the maids. The queen asked the library to send the astronomy books. The maids walked forward while talking. After the maids left, Loki looked at Lana hiding behind the pillar. At this time, Lana had become the queen of Asgard, Frigga. The middle-aged beautiful woman with a gorgeous appearance looked down at her body in panic and said to Loki, "No, I can't do it. I can't pretend to be someone else." "Hush. Calm down." Loki signaled to the other party to calm down. "You are now Frigga, my mother. You are the mistress here, so hold your head high and act like a queen." "But I'm not." Lana frowned. She didn't know how the other party sent her here. But there is no doubt that this place is quite dangerous. And Loki tried to use illusion to make himself pretend to be the mistress here. She didn't expect the other party to be so bold. "Calm down, I know this place better than anyone else. If you want to go back, we have to cooperate. Believe me, you will be fine," Loki vowed to the other party. He had dreamed of this place countless times and was quite familiar with it. "Okay, what do you want me to do?" Lana took a deep breath and calmed herself down. "Just follow me, remember, you are my mother now." Loki walked to the corridor, and Lana had no choice but to walk out carefully. Just then, several maids came over, and Loki quickly shouted to Lana, "Mother, let's go." The maids saw the Queen of Heaven and hurried over to salute. "Look, you are the Queen of Heaven now." After the maids left, Loki said to Lana proudly. Seeing that she was not exposed, Lana breathed a sigh of relief. Loki then took Lana and traveled all the way without any obstacles, and finally came to Odin's treasury. Along the way, seeing many incredible things in Asgard, Frigga, now Lana, was numb. She asked Loki, "What is this place?" "Odin's treasury. I want to take a few things to give to my father." Loki finally told her purpose. "You said you want to steal Odin's treasure." Lana was stunned. "I am Loki, how can it be stealing?" Loki glanced at the other party and said dissatisfiedly, "I have already inquired clearly. Now Odin has fallen into deep sleep, Thor has been exiled, and now the master of Asgard is me, the me of this world." He added in his heart, "Then why do you want me to pretend to be Queen Frigga? Because in some places, your face is obviously more useful than mine. For example, a guy just suspected me, but when he saw your face, he didn't dare to think too much." As Loki said this, he pushed open the door of Odin's treasury and entered. The destroyer who is responsible for guarding the treasury began to scan his genetic information the moment he entered. Since Loki and Loki in this world are isomorphs, the destroyer did not find any abnormalities and did not start the attack program. Very good. Loki looked at the many treasures in the treasury, and his mouth curled up slightly. Seeing the huge gloves placed at the door, inlaid with countless gems, Loki's eyes lit up. Such a majestic and domineering glove can be given to my father to play with his fingers. After putting the gloves away, Loki found a staff that exuded a powerful pressure. Holding the staff in his hand, feeling the powerful power coming from it, Loki walked out of the treasury with satisfaction. Too much is as bad as too little. Take these two first, and come back next time when you have time. Using illusion to turn the gloves and staff into ordinary gloves and weapons, Loki walked out of Odin's treasure house with the weapons. After getting the two treasures, he and Lana walked to the empty corridor of the courtyard, ready to let the rainbow bridge take him away from here. In the corridor, the real Queen Frigga came with her maids. After walking a few steps, she suddenly sensed something and stopped. "You go first," she asked the maids to leave first. Loki and Lana, hiding behind the pillar, looked at Frigga nervously, not knowing why she stopped. The next second, they turned around and saw Frigga looking at them from behind. "What are you doing?" Lana, who was startled, shouted, and Queen Frigga was also startled. "Oh, my God." Seeing the real queen appear in front of him, Loki immediately covered his forehead. Lana looked at the other person who looked exactly like her and was stunned. Queen Frigga was also shocked when she saw Lana. But she soon understood what was going on. She reached out her hand and removed Loki's illusion, restoring Lana's true appearance. "Hi, Mother, this is my friend. I was just joking with you." Loki pointed at Lana to show that he was just joking, trying to get away with it. Ding! The infinity gauntlet in his hand also removed the illusion and fell to the ground with a dull sound. The air suddenly fell into silence. Loki was already numb, and now he began to think about how he would run away if the other party called for help. However, Queen Frigga walked directly towards him, slowly stretched out her hand and stroked Loki's face. "You are not the Loki I know, are you? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels." Chapter 237 Frigga's Kindness. Peter snaps his fingers. "What? No, I am Loki." Loki quickly denied Frigga's guess. "I have always been the Loki you know. Remember, we met and chatted not long ago." "Really? Then what did we talk about?" Frigga asked Loki with a smile. Seeing that Loki was speechless, she put down her hand that was stroking his face. "Don't lie in front of me. I was raised by a witch," Loki said to Frigga helplessly. "Yes, I am not a Loki you know. I am Loki from Smalwell. My father is Peter Patrick, not Odin." "Then what about your mother?" Frigga asked him. "Well, this is a long story. You may not believe it. I don't have a mother." Seeing that Frigga didn't seem to have any intention of calling for help, Loki's nervous nerves relaxed. "Everyone has a mother, even gods are no exception." Frigga looked up and glanced at Loki's eyes and asked him, "Can you remove your disguise?" Loki hesitated. Of course, as he said that, he removed his disguise magic and his body turned into young Loki again. "When I saw you, I thought of Loki's childhood. He was very timid at that time. He often followed his brother, didn't speak or express his own opinions, and seemed to be out of tune with everyone," Frigga said with emotion, walked up to hold Loki's hand, and asked him, "Are you living well in your world?" "Yes, I'm fine." For some reason, facing this woman who obviously had no blood relationship with him, Loki's heart was slightly touched. He could feel Queen Frigga's undisguised concern for him. "I live on my father's farm. He is a more competent father. I also have brothers, but they are not Thor, but I am very happy," Loki said to Queen Frigga with a sincere tone. Queen Frigga smiled and said to him, "That means you have learned how to love others, because loving yourself will only make you more lonely, while loving others will make you happier." She looked at Lana and said, "If you want to come to Asgard, you can come here at any time. As the hostess here, I welcome you." "Thank you." Loki looked at the Infinity Gauntlet on the ground, coughed and asked her, "You don't mind if I take this thing away?" "Of course not." Frigga signaled to Loki that she would not mind. Loki, who got the answer, was a little unconvinced, and bent down to pick it up. He also deliberately looked at Frigga and pointed at the glove to confirm again. "Really? Of course." Frigga looked at her with a smile. After picking up the Infinity Gauntlet, Loki wanted to say something else. But there was a mess of footsteps in the distance, and the guards of the Asgard were rushing over here. "Sorry. I have to go." Loki nodded to Frigga and retreated with Ilana. "Don't worry, we'll see each other again." Frigga waved at him and said. Loki stepped back, staring at Frigga's figure until the rainbow bridge opened, then he turned around and grabbed Lana's arm. With a burst of brilliant light, Loki and Lana disappeared in Asgard. Queen Frigga looked at the two people who disappeared, exhaled slightly, turned to face the guards who came and said, "It's okay, you can go back." Although the guards were a little confused, they still obeyed the Queen's order and retreated. Frigga glanced in the direction of the rainbow bridge, and her eyes flashed with a strange light. Swoosh, with a dazzling white light flashing, Lana found herself standing on the farm again. Looking at the familiar scenery around her, she felt a little like she was in another world. After her sight touched the ash tree that exuded an unusual smell, she began to wonder if what she had just experienced was a dream. And the way to verify whether it was a dream was also very simple. She turned her head to look at Loki, and saw the gloves and staff in Loki's hand at a glance. Well, what happened just now was definitely not a dream. Just now. "How did we enter that world?" Lana asked him in disbelief. "How did you do it?" "Actually, I didn't do anything." Loki shrugged his shoulders at her. "I don't have such a great ability to travel to another world." "Then why did we enter the Asgard you mentioned and meet the goddess Frigga?" Lana didn't believe his nonsense. "Haven't you heard of saying? The less you know, the better it is for you." Loki held a staff in his hand and said to Lana, "Can you help me with one more thing?" "What?" "Keep everything you experienced tonight secret." Loki hoped that Lana could keep it secret. If his father knew that he took Lana to another world, Asgard, he would definitely scold him. "Why? If you tell this to other people, such as Clark, he will definitely tell it. You know, he is the person who is the worst at keeping secrets in the world. Loki pushed the responsibility to Clark. Why would I tell Clark about this? Lana asked in some confusion. I thought you had the best relationship with Clark. No, of course not. Lana looked at Loki speechlessly. She didn't know why he always made fun of her and Clark. Don't you like him? I refused to answer this question. Lana didn't want to talk to him at all. She had completely experienced how annoying Loki was. Just as she was calming down, she suddenly heard footsteps outside. Lana turned around and saw Chloe walking towards the farm accompanied by a blonde woman. Chloe. Lana was very happy to see Chloe was safe and sound. Are you okay? I'm fine. Chloe looked at Lana worriedly. But you jumped out of the car like crazy. Are you okay? I'm lucky. I just hit the haystack, so I didn't get hurt, Lana said guiltily. Her wound healed after entering Asgard that Loki mentioned just now. She cast her eyes on the ash tree in the courtyard again. She suspected that it was this tree that pulled her into that magical world and healed her body. Could it be that Uncle Patrick was actually a druid, and that he created such an incredible plant after communicating with nature? Lana began to imagine Peter's identity. Half an hour later, Peter rushed back to the farm. On the way to find Lana and Chloe, he already knew about the changes in the world tree. After sending Lana and Chloe back, Peter entered the world tree. Looking at the vast and majestic temple in front of him, Peter was slightly stunned. Is this Asgard? Peter really didn't expect that Asgard was born in the world tree. He thought that the giants were born in Jotunheim or Muspelheim. Standing in the square in front of the hall, Peter turned around and looked at the Rainbow Bridge in the distance. He also learned about the world shuttle function of the Rainbow Bridge. Shuttle through the Marvel world? Stroking his chin, Peter stared at the Rainbow Bridge and fell into deep thought. As far as he knows, there are many good things in the Marvel world, especially the Odin treasure house in Asgard. Rather than waiting for these treasures to be destroyed along with Asgard during Ragnarok, it is better to keep them in his own hands to avoid wasting them. At this time, Peter did not know that his evil plan had been planned and executed by Loki. Dad, just as he was lost in thought, footsteps suddenly sounded behind him. Peter looked back and found Loki behind him. Well, Dad, I found something in Asgard, Loki said as he handed the Infinity Gauntlet to Peter. Looking at the golden glove in Loki's hand, Peter was stunned. Did you snatch it back from Thanos? Peter asked Loki in confusion. Where did you get it from? I picked it up. Can you pick up something like this? Peter took the glove from Loki and looked at him in confusion. Can you pick up another one for me now? I guess it should be very difficult now. Loki smiled at him guiltily. Where did you pick it up? Peter continued to ask him. It's in the hall. Maybe it's a gift from the world tree, specially for my father. Loki lied to him. Peter naturally didn't completely believe Loki's words, but he didn't continue to ask. Instead, he lowered his head and looked at the gloves in front of him. The Infinity Gauntlet was almost the same as the one he saw in his previous life, inlaid with the glittering gems. Peter casually broke off a gem on it and found that it was just an ordinary gem, not an infinity gem. But even if it was inlaid with infinity gems, it shouldn't have any effect in the DC world. Loki next to him hesitated for a moment and couldn't help asking, Dad, am I the one who is not welcome in this family? Hearing this, Peter was a little surprised. Was this guy provoked by someone? No, of course not, Loki, although I don't know who you heard this from, but that person must be wrong. You will always be Dad's good boy. Peter took 2 steps forward and put his hand on Loki's head and rubbed it. I just thought of Loki in another world. Dad, do you think Odin is a good father? Loki asked Peter. Peter was stunned for a moment and said, yes, Odin loves his 3 children, but his love is not equal, because he sank one of his eyes into the spring of meteor in exchange for knowledge. He has omniscience in a certain sense. As a father, Odin knew before Thor was born that his eldest son would bring supreme glory to Asgard, so his love is rational and cold. Loki listened to Peter's words for a while and nodded. So, Dad, you don't want to be a god, almost. After chatting with Loki for a few more words, Peter took a deep breath and put on the Infinity Gauntlet on his right hand. While looking at the gauntlet, he took out a ruby from the 3 artifacts of the Sandman. With his left hand, he placed a ruby on the inlay of the Infinity Gauntlet. Looking at the Infinity Gauntlet emitting a bright red light, Peter snapped his fingers. Chapter 238 Loki instigated a divorce, and Azu went to Marvel. As the fingers snapped, A vast force instantly emanated from the glove, and an energy vortex appeared, expanding its range and spreading around. Loki looked at Peter, who snapped his fingers in shock, and felt a squeeze in the space. The sticky air around him made him feel like he couldn't breathe. As the violent energy spread outward, more city buildings rose from the ground in the open space. The entire environment of Asgard changed rapidly after Peter snapped his fingers. Feeling the rich magical atmosphere around him and the buildings that rose from the ground, Loki asked Peter in disbelief, "Dad, what happened?" "Nothing, just a snap of my fingers," Peter said as he stared at the glove and fell into deep thought. The Infinity Gauntlet was in his hand. Although it had lost the function of controlling the Infinity Gems, its basic function was still there. Since the glove was made of Yoru metal, the same material as Thor's hammer, and was made by the Dwarf King, it had basic enchantment functions. The wearer of the glove can freely use the power of the inlaid gems and control them more accurately. Ruby, with a medium of gemstones, stored the magic of the Sandman. Now that he was using the Infinity Gauntlet, he could control the output of magic more accurately. It was better than nothing. After taking off the gloves, Peter eliminated the buildings that were pulled from the dream to reality. Loki, who was standing next to him, looked at the gloves in Peter's hand and fell into a sluggish state. He didn't expect that an ordinary glove could be so powerful in his father's hands. "Dad, you know what this is, right?" Loki asked Peter curiously. "Yes, but it is not an item from this world, so it can't play a big role here," Peter asked Loki suspiciously. "Are you sure you didn't get it from another world?" "No, of course not, Dad. I just picked it up. I've always had good luck." Loki's eyes turned and he continued to ask Peter, "Then Dad, what role does it play in another world? I mean, the world where the world tree is. There are 6 gems in that world: the soul gem, the power gem, the space gem, the time gem, the reality gem, and the mind gem, and this glove is the carrier of these 6 gems," Peter said to Loki casually. "Once you collect all 6 gems, you will have the ability to manipulate everything in that universe. And even have the ability to create or erase the universe. Anything is possible." Loki's eyes flashed. "Anything is possible? You can even let it help you wipe out half of the population in the universe." Peter put away the Infinity Gauntlet and said to Loki, "But it's better not to do this, otherwise your head might be chopped off by someone." "No, of course I won't do this," Loki said to Peter with a solemn oath. "I love humans, Dad. I'm not an alien like Clark. I can't do something as cruel as killing half of humanity." Loki, standing beside Peter, swore and fell into deep thought. If he could collect all 6 gems, Loki narrowed his eyes slightly and had an idea in mind. The next day, early in the morning, Star-Lord went downstairs to eat. Not seeing Clark and Supergirl Kara at the table, Star-Lord asked Azu, "John, where are Clark and Kara?" "You should call me brother." Azu snorted and glared at Star-Lord. "Clark went home." Before Azu could speak, Loki beside him interrupted and said, "Clark went home, and Kara went back with him, but I guess Kara will go out and hide." Star-Lord didn't care about Azu's dissatisfaction, and asked with a surprised expression, "Why?" "Because there is a curious female reporter who keeps asking her if she has superpowers." Loki sat down and said to him, "The female reporter named Chloe, Clark's friend, probably discovered Kara's superpowers, so she wants to do an exclusive interview with her." "Huh?" Hearing Loki's terrifying words, Star-Lord patted his chest. "Okay, I will never show my superpowers in front of others in the future, don't worry," Loki said to Star-Lord. "The reporters won't be interested in you." "Why?" "Because your fat body will make them think you are a supervillain." Star-Lord frowned slightly. "Do you think I'm fat?" Loki nodded and asked. "Isn't it?" "No, of course not. It's cute." "Cute? I think you must have eaten puffer fish poisoning and have hallucinations." "Hey, listen, Loki, if I want to lose weight, I will definitely become a tough guy like Batman, and these extra fat will soon become muscles." As he said that, Star-Lord lifted his clothes and exposed his biceps. Peter, who was standing next to him, felt overwhelmed when he heard the 2 people arguing. He wanted to snap his fingers and send the 2 people to the dream world. "Quiet," Peter shouted at the 2 people. "If you want to argue about obesity, why not help me remove the grass now, so that you can lose weight and work at the same time?" Hearing Peter's words, Star-Lord and Loki immediately stopped talking. After breakfast, the hired workers continued to repair the farm. Bang! Azu carried the wood materials and put them in the cowshed. After looking around and confirming that there was no one, Azu walked towards the cows in the farm. Reaching out his hand, He pretended to touch the milk-producing part of the cow accidentally. After a slight touch, some milk was stained on his finger. Swallowing his saliva, Azu took advantage of the fact that no one was around and quickly licked the fishy milk. "Hey, John," Azu suddenly heard the voice behind him and immediately put his hand down. Although he was panicking like an old dog, he maintained basic calmness on the surface. He didn't understand why someone would always jump out to make trouble at this time. "Is there something wrong, Loki?" Azu turned around and looked at Loki, who suddenly disturbed him with some displeasure. "Are you okay?" Loki looked at him suspiciously. Of course, Azu pinched his waist and took a few deep breaths. There is no better time than now. Although he wanted to slap Loki a few times to make him sober, he finally held back. "Okay, I have a plan. Maybe we can work together," Loki said to him. "You and me, Clark and Star-Lord, we will work together." "What plan?" Azu did not agree to him, but looked at him suspiciously. Because he was often cheated by Loki, Azu's trust in Loki had dropped to the lowest level at this time. "Don't look at me like that. Am I not trustworthy in your eyes?" Loki sighed pretentiously and said to him, "I thought we were brothers and trusted each other. You can fool Star-Lord with this, but tell me, what are your plans?" Azu snorted and said expressionlessly. Loki stopped talking nonsense with Azu and directly told him what he thought. "I learned a very important message from my father. As long as we collect 6 gems and snap our fingers, we can realize any wish. Of course, the premise is that it is in that universe." Loki told Azu about the Infinity Gems. "Just think about it, fiddling with anything in the universe." Azu was not easily persuaded by the other party. He asked Loki, "What is your wish?" "Mine." Loki was stunned for a moment, and then said calmly, "There are many. One of the alternatives is to move the entire Asgard protist to the World Tree, so that father can become a real king. Not only that, Queen Frigga can divorce Odin and marry his father." However, stroking his chin, Loki felt that this idea was too outrageous. Although he had a good impression of Queen Frigga, his father did not know her. And Queen Frigga looked a little old. Moreover, if Thor and Loki in another world knew that he was instigating the divorce of their parents, they would definitely chase him to the ends of the earth. Loki frowned, thinking that it was very difficult to operate. Deal. Loki was thinking about something, but he did not expect Azu to agree directly. "If such a thing really exists, I am also very interested." Azu also has his own ambitions. "If it is really possible to realize the wish by collecting all the gems and snapping your fingers as the other party said, then he can change that world into what he imagined." Pulling his thoughts out of his mind, Azu said to Loki, "It's settled, but how are you going to convince Dad?" Azu quickly thought of the key issue. If several people disappeared for a period of time without reason, Peter would definitely not agree. "Isn't the holiday coming soon?" Loki said confidently. "We can convince Dad then." "Night, you said you want me to take you to that world." Peter frowned as he looked at the 4 naughty kids standing in front of him. "Yes, Dad, just treat it as going out camping, a family camping," Azu said. "We haven't had a family gathering together for a long time." Peter cast his eyes on Loki and the other 2. "Do you think so too?" "Yes." Star-Lord and Clark nodded. Peter pondered for a moment, looking at the different expressions of the 4 naughty kids. He always felt that they were going to cheat their dad again. "Okay, we'll go together, but when we get to that world, you must listen to me in everything and don't act recklessly," Peter said to the few people. Azu and the other 4 nodded in agreement. "Yes, Dad, very good." A week later, Peter took the 4 people and used the Rainbow Bridge to open the passage to the Marvel world. The teleportation of the Rainbow Bridge can only determine the approximate range, such as Asgard, Midgard, the human world, and Jotunheim, so Peter could not determine the exact location of his teleportation. As a dazzling white light flashed before his eyes, the dizziness slowly disappeared, and Peter found himself standing in a wilderness. It was pouring rain, and there was a camp built with tents and trucks in the distance. Chapter 239, Thor is beaten up by Peter's family without any moral ethics. "It seems that our luck is not very good." Clark looked up at the heavy rain and said depressedly. "Didn't you say that this time travel is like camping?" Peter asked a few people. "Didn't you prepare a tent?" Azu and the others looked at each other, thinking that we just found an excuse. "Dad, do you really believe it?" "Dad, there's a car in front. There should be someone inside," Azu said to Peter. "Let's go to avoid the rain." He actually wanted to say that he should drive the people inside out. But considering that he would probably be beaten by his father if he said that, he coughed and swallowed the words in his mouth. "Keep a low profile. His father only gave everyone a few days, and he had to investigate the clues of the Infinity Stones. At least the next time he came secretly, the efficiency of finding the gems would be much higher. At the same time, in the RV, Jane Foster looked at Peter and his group outside the car window in shock. "Did you see it, Kate?" Jane, with eyes full of disbelief, asked her friend Kate Dennings. "Did you see that bright light? It appeared and disappeared again." Jane Foster, an astrophysicist, drove here with her friend Kate Dennings and Professor Stellan Skarsgård to observe the sky. They did not expect to see an incredible scene. "And those people are the ones who appeared from the bright light?" Jane Foster asked the professor and her friend. "Did you see it?" "Yes, we saw it, Jane. You have asked us repeatedly," Kate said as she nervously took out a stun gun from the toolbox. "For safety, we have to take protective measures." Jane looked at her friend preparing the gun and said worriedly, "Maybe we saw it wrong. I think we should be more friendly." Kate stood up and looked at her speechlessly. "Remember your kindness last time? That drunk almost knocked you down." Professor Stellan walked to the car door, looked at Peter walking towards the car, and said to the two of them, "Don't worry, there are other campers here. Even if they are aliens, our safety is guaranteed." Knock. 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 As soon as he finished speaking, there was a knock on the car door. Jane glanced at Kate, took a deep breath, and stepped forward to open the door. Kate next to him nervously held a stun gun and raised it. Squeak, the door was opened, and Peter's bearded face appeared in front of her. "Hello, lady." Hello. Jane, who was shocked by the strong aura emanating from Peter, became unfluent in her speech. "My sons and I got lost and encountered heavy rain. Can I hide in your car for a while?" Peter asked the other party. Jane glanced at the two young men and two young boys behind Peter and nodded subconsciously. "Okay, you can come in," but she soon realized that something was wrong. How could this guy look so young when his son is so old? "You are obviously the same age, right?" Kate saw that there were two children among the people who came in, so she put down her heart. "Thank you," Peter thanked the other party. At the same time, looking at the furnishings in the RV in front of him, he guessed that this should be a scholar who went out to do research. "I'm Jane Foster, this is Kate, and this is Professor Strand." Jane introduced herself to Peter. Hearing the other party say that her name was Jane Foster, Peter was slightly stunned. Isn't this Thor's girlfriend? Is what he is experiencing now the plot of Thor being exiled to Earth? Peter, who had many thoughts in his mind, kept his expression on his face and nodded to the other party and said, "I'm Peter Patrick." After introducing each other, the atmosphere became a little less awkward, and several people talked to each other. Jane kept glancing at Peter secretly. She really wanted to confirm whether what she just saw was an illusion. Could someone really appear from lightning? We detected that there might be an abnormal weather scene nearby, a magnetic storm, so we tracked it all the way here, the professor explained to Peter and the others. He also held a cup of coffee and asked them, "Would you like a cup?" Clark took the coffee from the other party and asked, "So you are scientists?" "Yes, the professor and I are." Jane pointed at Kate. "Kate is not." Kate looked defeated. "I am a political science major." Jane said to her, "You are the only one who applied for political science." After a few words with her bestie, Jane asked Peter, "So, how did you get here?" "We were camping in the wild, Rob, and then encountered a rainstorm. If it weren't for your help, I'm afraid we would have been outside all the time." Peter gave a seemingly reasonable reason. "That's terrible. Do you need to call the police?" Jane handed him a mobile phone. "Thank you, we borrowed someone else's mobile phone on the way to call the police." Peter declined. After a few words, the rain outside gradually stopped. "Looks like we're lucky. The rain has stopped. We're going to continue on our way. Do you want to join us?" Jane stood up, looked at the rain outside, and asked Peter. Of course, Peter knew that Thor's hammer was probably nearby. He was interested and prepared to go and check it out. The car was driving on the road after the rain. Professor Stellan was talking to Peter while driving. "Be careful," Star-Lord quickly reminded him when he saw a figure suddenly jumping out in front of him. The professor was startled and stepped on the brakes. But the figure was still knocked to the ground. Jane, who was frightened, got out of the car quickly to check the situation and shouted to Kate, "Take out the medical kit." "Kate?" Jane was stunned for a moment when she found that the other person was wearing a hospital gown, and then he used a flashlight to shine on the other person's face. The familiar face made her stunned. This seems to be the muscular man she bumped into last time. 2 days ago? When she was observing astronomy in the wild, she accidentally knocked him down. Did she send him to the hospital? Why did he run here again and be hit by her for the second time? Are you okay? Jane asked the other person nervously. The motionless sturdy man suddenly stood up and staggered to look at Jane. Hammer? Where's my hammer? While shouting hammer, he waved his arms like a drunk. Where's my hammer? Kate, who was next to him, immediately covered her forehead after seeing that the other person was the guy who was hit last time. Oh my god. It's him again. Peter looked at the other person and quickly recognized that it was Thor, the god of thunder. Thor, who was in a bad mental state and probably drank alcohol, kept shouting hammer, but his eyes suddenly caught Loki next to him. Although Loki was in teenage form, he recognized him at a glance. Loki. Thor stopped and looked at Loki in shock. He didn't expect to see his brother here. Why are you here? He walked towards Loki quickly and grabbed his collar. Loki, tell my father that I know I was wrong. Tell him to take me back. Tell him to open the Rainbow Bridge. Loki looked at the excited Thor and shook his head coldly. You are wrong. I am not your brother, you are Loki. I will not admit your mistake no matter what you become. Thor roared at him. My father is not Odin. Loki grabbed Thor's hand and tore it off his clothes. My father is Peter Patrick. Hearing Loki's words, Thor was stunned. He looked at Loki and then at Peter. He is right. Loki is my son, Peter said to him. It seems that you have been deprived of your power by Odin. Thor, you. Loki. You betrayer, you even abandoned your father. The angry Thor rushed towards Loki. As a result, Loki grabbed his arm the next second. You stupid and arrogant guy, you will never know how reckless and brainless you are. Loki grabbed his hand and slammed him to the ground. With a bang, Thor's body hit the mud and water heavily, splashing many mud and water spots. Jane and others nearby looked at Loki throwing this muscular man named Thor to the ground, and opened their mouths in astonishment. Thor struggled to get up from the mud and water, looking at Peter, Azu, Clark and Star-Lord beside him in disbelief. Who are you? Thor asked Peter, covering his chest. Peter said to him, you can think of me as the master of Asgard in another world. Impossible. Thor roared at Peter. The master of Asgard is only my father, there will be no one else. Thor, who was completely enraged, rushed towards Peter. He wanted to defend his father's honor. But before Peter could make a move, Azu grabbed his neck and slammed him to the ground. Bang! Thor's back made close contact with the ground. He felt a sharp pain all over his body, and more mud splashed on his body. Unwilling to admit defeat, he stood up and continued to attack, and Star-Lord and Clark also started to fight. Although the opponent was an ordinary person, ordinary people would have to fight if they dared to hit their father. Clark grabbed the opponent's collar, and Star-Lord slapped the drunkard in the face. Pah! Thor was hit so hard that his eyes were full of gold. He gasped for breath, covered his face, and looked at Azu and his group in shock. He didn't understand why these guys who suddenly appeared were so powerful. This is not the power that ordinary people can show, right? Hammer. Only by finding the hammer and regaining the power of Thor can he defeat these guys. He knew that his hammer fell nearby. Using all his strength, Thor endured the humiliation of being slapped and looked at Peter. He covered his chest and gasped, and said to Peter, if you are a warrior, wait until I get a hammer before fighting me. Looking at the embarrassed Thor in front of him, Peter's eyebrows moved slightly. I didn't expect that the rude Thor would also use provocation. Okay. Chapter 240, Thor's harsh words, revenge is imminent. Seeing that Peter didn't seem to have any intention to continue, Thor covered his chest cautiously and looked at him. Very good, then the agreement is reached. When I find the hammer, we will continue the fight. Thor glanced at Azu and the other four with a serious expression. He wanted to remember the appearance of these four people. As a Thor who values honor, he wanted to get back his humiliation. I need a horse. Thor looked at the stunned Jane and the other three, and suddenly said, can you provide me with a horse? What? Jane looked at Thor blankly, not knowing why the other party asked her for a horse. In this damn place, where could she find a horse? And she was not familiar with the other party. For a moment, she felt that the other party was a little sick. Or other animals that can be ridden. My hammer is in front, and I need to ride over, Thor said to Jane while being vigilant and careful of Peter and the other's sudden attack on him. No, we don't, Jane thought for a moment after taking a look at Thor's muscles and said to him, or you can go to a nearby pet store. Thor saw that the other party could not provide him with a horse, so he stopped talking to Jane and the others. He looked at Peter deeply. I will defeat you, I swear, in the name of Thor, the god of thunder." Then he turned and left. "He's Thor, the god of thunder?" Jane asked her best friend Kate in disbelief. "I don't know, but I guess it's more likely that the other party is a drunkard. After all, Thor would not be so weak, no matter which myth Thor is from," Kate said as she cast her eyes on Peter and the others. She felt that the possibility of the people in front of her looking like Thor was much greater than that guy just now. Seeing that Thor was about to get the Meow Meow hammer, Peter was not in a hurry. It was unknown when this guy would arrive on foot. And now Thor has not been recognized by the Meow Meow hammer, so he probably can't lift it. Looking at Thor's back as he left, Peter turned and walked towards Jane and the others. "Sorry, I didn't scare you, did I?" Jane was stunned for a moment, then took a deep breath. "No. Do you know that person?" "Not very well. He may have recognized the wrong person," Peter said to her. "It may be because he is drunk, but I heard him say that he is Thor, the god of thunder, and he called your son Loki, which seem to be two gods in Norse mythology." Jane swallowed nervously and asked Peter, "Why did he say that? Are you really gods in Norse mythology?" "No, of course not. Aren't you a scientist?" Peter said to her. "In addition to science, is Miss Foster also interested in Norse mythology?" Kate, who was standing next to her, interrupted, "But I heard you call him Loki just now." "My name is Rocky Patrick. And sometimes my dad calls me Loki," Loki explained to the two. "That's just my nickname." Although she was skeptical about what Peter and his group said, Jane did not continue to ask. Professor Strand came over and said to everyone, "There is a town 10 miles ahead. We can drive there and then rest." Peter naturally would not object. It is always better to take a free ride than to walk. "Thank you," he thanked the three again. Peter took his sons into the car, and Professor Strand continued to drive forward. However, after what happened just now, the expression on his face was not as calm as before. When the old professor, who was over 70 years old, thought that the gods in the mythology books he read when he was a child might be in his car, he couldn't help but tremble in his heart. There was no conversation along the way, and the RV soon drove to a nearby town. After parking the car near the hotel, everyone got out of the car and entered the hotel. In the hotel, the shutters of the motel were a bit old. Cars whizzed by on the road from time to time, and the dazzling car lights shone into the windows, making the room bright and dark. Star-Lord stood in front of the blinds, took a look outside, and asked Peter, "Dad, is that really Thor?" "Yeah, it's the real deal, but he was banished by Odin after his power was taken away." Zoo, Clark, and Loki were also sitting on the side. Clark asked Peter curiously, why did he recognize Loki as his brother? "Because," Loki coughed and stood up, saying to Clark, "because the world we entered really has Thor and Loki, and I happen to look a lot like Loki here." Zoo frowned and asked him, "You mean, just like the Black Robe world, there is another one of you here?" "Almost, but we are two people, don't confuse us." Loki said that he had nothing to do with a Loki in this world. "Why?" Zoo asked him, "Do you hate yourself?" "I don't hate myself, I just don't like guys who have the same face as me, and this guy looks like a bad guy, or like someone who is doing bad things." Loki paused, shrugged and said to Azu, "But I am a person of noble character." Azu was stunned, as if he was getting to know Loki all over again. "You said you have noble character, is there a problem?" Loki asked back with a puzzled expression. "That may be the biggest misunderstanding." Azu glanced at Peter and said to Loki, "Dad said that the most difficult thing is to recognize yourself, but it seems that you haven't gotten out of this stage yet." Facing Azu's ridicule, Loki retorted, "You did misunderstand. I said that I am of high moral character compared to some people." Seeing that Azu seemed to be about to scare, Loki coughed and quickly changed the subject and said to Peter, "Dad, do you think Thor can lift his hammer?" "Probably not." Peter was too lazy to care about the quarrel between the two boys. He said in a casual tone, "Odin wanted him to reform, but he doesn't seem to have changed much." Listening to Peter's words, Loki nodded. After a while, he asked Peter, "Dad, you seem to know this world very well." "Nonsense, how can I, who have read the script in advance, not be familiar with the Marvel world?" "Yes, if I want, I will always know what I want to know." Peter stood up and said to several people, "It's getting late, go to bed early, we still have to wait for Thor's revenge tomorrow." The next day, early in the morning, in a cafe near the hotel, Peter and his friends had breakfast with Jane, Kate and the old professor. The brightly colored walls, the light shining through the curtains, and the streets after the rain exuded a unique smell. "Can I take a picture of you?" Kate asked Peter, who was sitting opposite, holding the camera. Of course, Peter smiled and cooperated with Kate to take pictures. I think you have the potential to be a model. Without oil, your body is even more perfect than those bodybuilding champions. Kate stared at the muscles on Peter's body and said boldly without any shyness. Really? Actually, my profession is a cowboy, the kind who works on a farm. Peter picked up the coffee and said to her. Then are you single now? Seeing her best friend so crazy, and in front of her 4 sons, Jane felt a little speechless. She was about to stop her best friend, when the door of the cafe was suddenly pushed open and several burly bikers entered. You missed a good show, the biker wearing a North Carolina hat said to his friend. A satellite landed in the desert. Everyone went to join in the fun. You should have gone to see it, but it's too late to go now. The FBI has surrounded the thing after they arrived. They said it has radiation. I accidentally touched it twice. I don't know if it's okay. Listening to the other party talking about satellites, Jane's fork pierced the egg yolk, and the overflowing yellow liquid surrounded the toast. She put down her fork, turned around and asked the biker, sorry, did you say a satellite fell? Yes, the professor's interest was also aroused. He joined the conversation and asked the biker, what kind of satellite is it? I don't know about satellites, but that thing is very heavy. No one can lift it. Loki, who was eating, interrupted him. Where is that thing? It's about 50 miles west from here. Hearing the other party's words, Peter's eyebrows moved slightly. After finishing breakfast, Peter and his friends parted ways with Jane and the other 2. The other party still had to continue observing astronomical phenomena, so they couldn't take Peter to the desert. After they separated, Peter took Azu and the others to the desert. In order to take care of Star-Lord's physical fitness, the others did not use super speed and decided to walk. Unexpectedly, Jane drove over just half an hour after they walked out. Want a ride? Peter was stunned for a moment, then nodded happily. Of course, in the car, Peter asked Jane, why did Miss Foster come here alone? Just call me Jane. Jane drove the car and said to him helplessly, S.H.I.E.L.D. took away all my information. They said I was involved in a terrorist activity. My thesis is all over. However, since the thesis topic cannot be carried out, maybe I can have another more crazy scientific experience. I always feel that I will encounter something more incredible than the magnetic storm when I follow you. Jane smiled at Peter and said, this is the craziest decision I have ever made in my life. Peter listened to her and nodded, saying, as a scientist, sometimes you have to do something that abandons rationality. As the few of them talked, they soon arrived at the place where the satellite fell, as the biker gang said. The scene has been fenced with barbed wire and the tents have completely covered the area. Surrounding it are patrolling guards. The government has already discovered it. We are too late. Jane looked at the fenced area and shook her head in disappointment. At the same time, Thor also arrived at the scene. Chapter 241. The Godfather picked up the meow hammer. Clark chose human relations. Who is that? Jane, who was lying on the outer edge of the wire fence, was stunned when she saw a strong man knock out 2 guards in the car easily through a telescope. This guy seemed familiar. It's Thor. Azu looked inside the wire fence and said to Jane, it seems that he really wants to get the hammer back. Thor, who didn't know that his every move was seen by Peter and his group, sneaked up on 2 guards and knocked them out. He changed into their clothes and sneaked into the secret base temporarily built by S.H.I.E.L.D. But the patrolling guards soon found the 2 people who fainted. Alarm! Someone broke through the defense. As the guards reported, the entire base immediately sounded a shrill alarm. Oh my God! Seeing the searchlight light up, Jane, who was lying on the ground, quickly retreated. We are going to be discovered. We have to leave. I don't want to be caught by these people. Don't worry. Peter signaled the other party not to move. The guards quickly searched here, and Jane, who was blocked by Peter, desperately thought that she was going to be discovered. What she didn't expect was that Peter and his men were clearly standing here, but the guards in charge of the search turned around and left as if they didn't see anything. After the guards left, Jane was shocked and whispered to Peter, how did you do it? I know a little about hypnosis. Hypnosis? Jane was stunned for a moment, thinking that this was not hypnosis, but brainwashing, right? Crack! Just as Jane was guessing how Peter did it, a thunder suddenly came from the sky. Then heavy rain fell. Thor, braving the heavy rain, rushed all the way to the location of Meow Meow Hammer. He could feel the existence of Meow Meow Hammer and the call of the other party to him. The guards who blocked the way were thrown out of his arms and knocked to the ground with brute force. More and more guards rushed up, ready to capture Thor alive. Although he had no divine power, Thor still knocked down these guards one by one with his muscles and fighting skills. Phil Coulson, the highest officer of SHIELD, used the walkie-talkie to give orders to his opponent. "I need someone to control this situation from a high place, with a gun." Hawkeye, who received the order, picked up the compound bow, climbed up the stairs to the highest point of the base, pulled the compound bow open, and aimed at Thor, who was fighting with the guards. Once Coulson gave the order, he would shoot arrows at the other party. Bang! After knocking over the guard who rushed over with a punch, Thor grabbed the top of the simple passage, raised his legs and kicked the guard to knock the passage open and fall outside. Panting slightly, he finally arrived at the scene of Meow Meow Hammer. Thor, who was covered in mud and water and in a mess, looked at the hammer in front of him with a smile on his face. "Loki, you wait for my revenge." Walking to the hammer, Thor issued his own revenge declaration. Hawkeye on the other side saw that Thor was about to touch the hammer and asked Coulson through the headset, "Should I do it?" "He is about to touch the hammer." "No." Coulson, who was watching everything with a monitor, said to him, "Don't do it. I want to see if he can lift it." "Huh?" Thor took a deep breath and proudly reached out to the hammer, wanting to pick it up and prepare to resume his identity as Thor. As a result, when he touched Thor's hammer and wanted to lift it, he found that the hammer was motionless. The expression on Thor's face froze instantly. He increased his strength in disbelief, but found that the hammer was still motionless. No, don't do this." Thor, whose mentality had quietly changed, muttered quietly while continuing to increase his strength. The result was still that he could not pick up the hammer. He was still an unrecognized exile, not recognized by his father, and not recognized by Thor's hammer. "No." Thor knelt on the ground and shouted in pain. The heavy rain fell, soaking his whole body. Coulson, who was watching everything, shook his head in disappointment and prepared to let his men close the net. But the next second, he saw several figures appear near the hammer. Peter looked at Thor kneeling in the mud and said to him, "I was looking forward to you picking up the hammer and starting your revenge, but now it seems that Thor, your big words have become empty words." Thor raised his head when he heard Peter's voice. Peter, the guy who held his arm, Clark, and the fat guy who slapped him, Star-Lord, the three of them were standing near Thor's hammer and looking at him with complicated expressions. Thor, who was now in despair, did not want to talk to Peter. He just wanted to lick his wounds. Peter saw Thor had lost his will to fight, shook his head and walked towards the Meowth hammer. He stretched out his hand and grabbed Thor's hammer. Seeing Peter's action, Coulson was stunned. He had no idea how the other party had broken through the obstacles and entered here. The alarm did not respond at all, and the guards did not notice it. How could this be possible? Hawkeye also stared at Peter's actions nervously. Under the gaze of everyone, Peter held the Meowth hammer and lifted it up. In Thor's shocked eyes, the Meowth hammer was held in Peter's palm and lifted up easily. "This is impossible." Seeing the Meowth hammer held in Peter's palm, Thor was struck by lightning and felt bad all over. A feeling of betrayal rose from the bottom of his heart. It was as uncomfortable as being NTRS in front of him. His beloved Meowth hammer actually abandoned him and turned to the arms of others. Coulson watched Peter raise the hammer, his eyes full of disbelief. He asked his men on the radio, "Who is he? Why is this person there?" The agents looked at each other. No one could answer his question. Peter, holding the Meowth hammer, felt a powerful force coming from inside and exhaled. He didn't expect that he would pick up the Meowth hammer so easily. In the DC world, he owns a world tree and can be considered the master of Asgard. Although the two world trees have a deep connection, they are two different worlds after all. Is it because of the world tree that Meowth hammer can recognize him now? Or is it because of his great character that Meowth hammer recognizes him? Peter was lost in thought, while Clark and Star-Lord next to him were stunned. You can pick up Meowth hammer, and you still say you are not a god. Amid the different expressions of the crowd, Peter held the hammer and raised it. With a boom, a thunderbolt fell from the sky and hit Meowth hammer. Thor felt paralyzed by the powerful thunderbolt. Why? Why can you lift it? Thor asked Peter in a distraught manner. Maybe it's because I'm more qualified than you. Thor, no, impossible, impossible. Meow hammer won't abandon me. Thor lowered his head and turned into Xianglin Sao, muttering to himself. Peter looked at the other person and knew that he might have suffered a big blow. While considering whether to say a few words of comfort, there was a chaotic sound of footsteps outside. The agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. had arrived. Shaking his head, Peter activated the rune magic, and a gust of wind blew around. The temporary corridors and rooms were instantly blown off the roof by the gust of wind. Heavy rain and mud swept around, and the SHIELD agents were blown all over the place. Hawkeye, who was standing on the highest shelf, also grabbed the fence tightly with his hands to prevent himself from being blown away. After the gust of wind dissipated, the agents looked at what Peter had stood before and found that only Thor was lying on the ground. Coulson put down the radio helplessly, let the ground troops capture him, and investigate the origin of that person as quickly as possible. In the car, Jane looked at the Meowth hammer in Peter's hand in shock. "Are you the god of thunder?" she asked Peter in surprise. "And how did you get in just now?" Peter shook his head and said to him, "No, I'm not the god of thunder." "I doubt it," the professor said, losing his scientific rigor, "but I still have to say that I have read Norse mythology, and you look like the gods in it, and this hammer, it should belong to the god of thunder, right?" Jane felt that Peter was full of mystery as she spoke. "Are you really from New York, Mr. Patrick?" Facing Jane's 100,000 whys, Peter said to her helplessly, "Yes, you guess it right. I am Odin, the master of Asgard. I am educating my son Thor to be a new man. Now I met you because of some setbacks. As long as you transfer me $3,000, I will make you the chief Valkyrie when I return to Asgard." Jane thought Peter was telling the truth at first, but soon realized that he was joking with her. She glared at Peter, stopped talking and concentrated on driving. Half an hour later, the car drove to the hotel. After Peter entered the room, he quickly attracted the attention of Azu and the other four. "Is this Thor's hammer?" Azu saw Peter put the hammer on the table and came over to try to grab it. Peter looked at the four people, raised his mouth slightly and said, "You can try to see who can lift it." Although he said so, he didn't quite believe that any of his sons could lift it. Zu came up to try, but even if he tried his best, veins on his forehead bulged, the Meowth hammer didn't move at all. Then Star-Lord came to try, but he couldn't move it just like Zu. Loki knew that he was not strong enough to lift the hammer, so he chose to give up. When it came to Clark, he looked at Peter nervously, then took a deep breath. He held the hammer with both hands and lifted it up. Peter thought Clark couldn't lift it either, but the hammer moved slightly upwards with the other party's movement. Peter's expression froze. "No, I can't." Clark let go of his hand and said helplessly to Zu and the others, "I can't lift it. Only the Godfather is qualified to be recognized by it." "Peter, you kid are still trying to play favors with me. Am I that kind of petty person?" Chapter 242 Thor becomes the fat and happy god. The next day, inside SHIELD, Thor, who was imprisoned, sat in a chair in a state of despair. The huge blow made him look like a walking corpse. Suddenly, he looked up and saw Loki standing in front of him. "Loki, it's me, brother." Loki from the Marvel world appeared in the cell where Thor was imprisoned at some point. He folded his hands over his chest and said to Thor, "I'm here to tell you a piece of news." He paused and said to him expressionlessly, "Dad is dead." "What?" Thor was stunned, his eyes full of disbelief. "You were expelled, and the threat of a new round of war." He really couldn't bear it. Loki's eyes showed sadness. "You must not blame yourself. I know you love him." I wanted to tell him, but he wouldn't listen. Thor listened to Loki's words. Tears instantly filled his eyes. But he tried hard not to cry, just breathing heavily to hide his emotions. Loki seemed not to notice Thor's action, and continued to say to him calmly, "Now the crown falls on my head." Thor suppressed his emotions, looked up and asked the other party, "Can I go home?" "No, you can't. The armistice agreement with the Jotuns is conditional on your exile." Thor pleaded with Loki. "Yes, but I can't not see my father off on his last journey." Marvel Loki shook his head. "And my mother, she also forbade you to go back." "Brother, I came to say goodbye to you." Hearing this, Thor could no longer control his tears. Taking a deep breath, he apologized to Loki. "I'm very sorry. Thank you for coming to see me." Loki looked at him and turned away. "Goodbye, my brother." The next second, his figure suddenly disappeared. After leaving SHIELD, Marvel Loki moved in the direction of Meow Meow Hammer. When he arrived in the desert, he was shocked to find that Meow Meow Hammer was gone. With his hands on his waist, he suddenly had the urge to curse. Who took Meow Meow Hammer? Peter, the murderer who stole the Meow Hammer, was talking to the professor in the cafe. The professor was quite interested in his identity as a god in Norse mythology. He kept asking him if he was Thor, the god of thunder. Kate and Jane on the other side were arguing. "Wait, You said you broke into the restricted area with them yesterday, and were almost discovered, Kate asked Jane in surprise. Didn't you say you were going to ask for our things that were confiscated by the Bureau? I still have more than 30 paid songs in my Walkman. Can you not mention your Walkman? Those materials are also very important to me. I will get them back. Jane tidied her hair randomly. I know, Jane, you are also interested in muscular handsome guys, right? Jane was stunned for a moment, then immediately denied. No, of course not. Then why did you send Patrick and the others to the desert? Kate felt that she had guessed Jane's thoughts, but I forgive you. She turned to Jane and said, you have to promise me to get my Walkman back. Jane glanced at Peter who was talking to the professor and said, okay, I'll try my best. After the two finished talking, she took a deep breath and walked towards Peter. The professor seems to be particularly interested in you. Peter nodded. It seems that he is. He kept asking me if I was Thor and whether there was a rainbow bridge in Asgard. Jane nodded. You can't blame him for this. Who asked you to pick up the hammer and say that you are the Lord of Asgard? I have the same idea as the professor, that is, you are not from New York. Can I ask you for a favor? After a pause, she asked Peter a little embarrassedly. What? Can you help me get the information back from the Bureau? Perhaps because she felt that this request was too abrupt, Jane added, I mean, do you have any ideas? The professor contacted one of his colleagues. Maybe his colleague can get it back. I'm not sure. Of course, Peter nodded. Although he could easily get it done, adhering to the idea of having his son run errands, you don't have to do anything yourself. Peter called Azu and asked him to go to S.H.I.E.L.D. to help get the information back. Dad, can you do it? Azu asked him expectantly. What? Peter was stunned for a moment. I asked you to get something. John, are you planning to rob? No, Dad, I just... Didn't you say that S.H.I.E.L.D. is a bunch of idiots? Jane, who was standing next to him, heard Azu's words and was full of question marks. Even if it's true, you can't say it, Peter said to him unhappily. Also, I'm a pacifist, and I don't advocate the use of violence when it's not necessary. He now felt that it was a bit hasty to give the task to Azu. This kid shouldn't tear down S.H.I.E.L.D. You just need to get Jane's things back, Peter told him. Don't cause any more trouble. Of course, Azu vowed to Peter. I am a peacemaker just like you, Dad. Peter, after leaving the cafe, Azu prepared to go to the temporary base of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the desert. Just as he was about to leave, Loki called him. Hey, John. Turning around, Azu looked at Loki who was walking over and asked with a frown, what's the matter? He suspected that the other party had no good intentions in looking for him. You are going to S.H.I.E.L.D., right? Yes, what's the problem? I'll go with you. Loki said that he would accompany him. Accompany me? What's your conspiracy? Azu didn't believe that the other party would be so kind to help him. No, of course not. We are brothers, aren't we? Loki said to him sincerely. At any time, we help each other. This is the meaning of brothers. Azu looked at Loki's expression, which did not seem fake, and finally nodded. Okay, but you just need to stay outside. Of course, you make the decision. 10 minutes later, Azu and Loki arrived at the temporary base of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the desert. Loki was waiting outside, and Azu used his perspective eyes to scan the clues of the items provided by Jane. Soon he found the other party's computer and notebook and other things. After activating super speed, Azu entered the inside of S.H.I.E.L.D. After seeing the other party enter, Loki immediately took action himself. Using illusion, Loki easily entered the base and found Thor who was imprisoned. His target was Thor. Such a muscular man who can fight a dozen agents alone, even without divine power, can be brought to the farm as a cowboy. Didn't Azu say before that he wanted to catch a black man and put him on the farm to work? Thor, the god of thunder, in front of him now, is the most suitable worker. Definitely better than black people. And they know everything about him, and they can work honestly without the black version of kryptonite, and they are not afraid that he will run away after getting a woman pregnant. Thor, Loki transformed into a young man and appeared in front of Thor. Thor was immersed in the grief of losing his father, and looked up to see Loki standing in front of him again. Why are you here again? Did my mother agree to let me attend my father's funeral? Thor asked excitedly. He didn't know that the Loki in front of him was not the Loki he knew, but he rushed over like grabbing a life-saving straw. Father's funeral. Loki was stunned for a moment, and immediately guessed that Odin was dead. A smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and Loki quickly controlled his emotions. You are wrong, I am not your brother Loki, I am Loki Patrick, I am here to save you. Save me? How to save me? It's very simple, Loki said as he walked out of the room where Thor was imprisoned and sounded the alarm. Hearing the alarm sound, Azu on the other side didn't know what was going on and thought he was discovered. So he stopped hiding and showed up and used violence to break in. While Azu was attracting firepower, the whole base was in chaos. Loki used the room to break a lock and took Thor out of the cell. Putting on Thor's special agent helmet, Loki successfully rescued Thor. I don't know why you helped me. Thor, who was rescued, looked at Loki in confusion. Because my father took your hammer, but didn't want you to get hurt, so he asked me to help you. Loki moved Peter out. It was my father who asked me to save you. He is a peacemaker. He thought to himself that since Odin is dead, you can treat my father as the new Odin. But he felt that this was a bit too much, so he swallowed his words. Thor was stunned for a moment, and said to Loki with mixed feelings, "Thank you, brother, I won't hate you. It's me, I messed up everything." He looked around and said, "Is there a bar here?" "What? I just want to get drunk now, in the evening." Peter looked at Thor, who was lying on the sofa, snoring loudly, holding a bottle of wine in his hand, and asked Loki, "What did you say just now?" "I said, Dad, Thor is definitely better than black people to work on the farm," Loki said guiltily. He always felt that things were beyond his expectations. It seemed that he didn't get a farm laborer, but got an old man instead. Thor made a sound in his mouth and almost rolled off the sofa. He stood up with a bottle supporting the ground. Thor looked around the environment in front of him with his drunken eyes, and his eyes lit up when he saw Peter. "It's you." Peter thought that the other party would ask him for the Meow hammer, but he didn't expect that the other party burped and waved at him. "Forget it, let Meow follow you. Anyway, I am an incompetent master." With his drunken eyes, he saw a piece of cream cake on the table, and his eyes became brighter. Walking to the table, he picked up the cake and gobbled it up. "Sorry, I'm a little hungry." Peter glanced at his stomach and suspected that this guy's belly would be swollen in less than a week. "Very good." Without Thanos snapping his fingers, Thor has become a fat and happy god in advance. Thank you for the reward from Chong Shashi and the support from readers. Please give me a monthly ticket. Thank you. Chapter 243. You, the Fat Thunder God, are completely dependent on me. Hey, that's mine. Star-Lord saw Thor stuffing his cream cake into his mouth and immediately shouted at him. Sorry, my bad. Thor put his hand down, but the cake had been eaten up by him. Well, you eat more voraciously than a lumberjack, Star-Lord complained to him. You'd better control your diet, otherwise your body will become like mine. Thor smiled at him and sat down on the sofa. Thank you for saving me. Your name is Peter Patrick, right? Thor picked up the bottle of Budweiser beer, opened the bottle cap while looking at Peter, and drank it all in one gulp. The slightly sour taste spread in his mouth. After pouring it into his stomach, the wine stayed in his stomach, making him feel an indescribable pleasure. After drinking it, Thor burped, and by the window not far away, the frightened bird flapped its wings and flew outside. I will repay you. I will remember your help. Your son's rudeness to me is in the past. I forgive them. Thor put down the bottle and said to Peter sincerely. Peter looked at his behavior and glanced at Loki next to him. This guy seems to be relying on him now. And he doesn't look like a capable guy. Alcoholism is not a good way to escape, Thor, Peter said to him earnestly, and it will make your body grow horizontally, which is a dangerous signal. I know. Thor sat down on the sofa, exhaled a breath of alcohol, and said to Peter, at this moment, I feel like the thorns on my fingertips, you know? I want to pick them out, even though it means pulling it, but the result will be to pull my arm apart into two piles of bloody things. Drunk Thor shook his head. I have always believed the opposite of everything, but it turns out I was wrong. Peter looked at the decadent Thor, frowned slightly and said, this is not necessarily a bad thing, you just don't know the answer to the question yet. The first time, Thor didn't seem to hear what Peter said, and continued, I don't know what I'm going to do at all. I have disappointed many people. I have never been a qualified warrior. Thor, at this point, suddenly asked Star-Lord next to him, can you buy me a bottle of beer? Burp. As he spoke, he burped again for a long time. Star-Lord, he felt that this guy was even more shameless than himself. Loki, who was standing next to him, felt a little headache when he saw Thor's behavior. Okay, Dad, I'll make him sober. Loki vowed that he would definitely make Thor a qualified farm cowboy. The next day, early in the morning, Peter handed over the information and electronic products that Zoo had taken back from S.H.I.E.L.D. to Jane. Originally, he asked Zhu to keep a low profile and just take the things back. What he didn't expect was that this kid seemed to have completely forgotten his instructions and broke in violently, knocking down many S.H.I.E.L.D. agents along the way, even breaking Hawkeye's arm, and finally leaving in a swagger. Peter, who didn't know that it was Loki who was playing tricks in the middle, was considering whether he should do it himself next time something like this happened. Thank you. That's great, so I don't have to start from scratch. Jane, who had her lost items back, thanked Peter excitedly. She didn't expect that she could get her things back. But there were some accidents in the process, Peter added. Accident? Jane blinked and asked worriedly, what do you mean by accident? John may have been a little violent in the process of retrieving the information. You mean? Jane hesitated and asked Peter. John beat up those S.H.I.E.L.D. agents. Peter nodded. Almost. So S.H.I.E.L.D. may continue to make trouble for you. I don't care. S.H.I.E.L.D. tried every means to prevent my research from being seen. No matter what their purposes, they have been stopping me. Jane flipped through the notebook and said to Peter helplessly, maybe my destiny is difficult. There's no such thing as difficulty, Peter said as he looked at the notebook in Jane's hand. If you give up now, all the work you've done before will be in vain, Jane said to him. I know, I always believe in some illusory things, such as the human figure that appeared in the magnetic storm before, and the Asgard you mentioned. I always believe that these incredible things exist in the world, but the professor always scolds me for having wild ideas, Peter comforted her. In fact, in ancient times, people called things they didn't understand magic, and now they call it science, but in Asgard, people there don't make a specific distinction between the two. As he said that, Peter took the notebook and pen from Jane's hand and began to describe the world tree for him. This is Asgard, humans. No, in your words, it should be gods. They live here. The world tree divides the space. They are connected to each other but independent of each other. The sound of the pencil squeaking sounded, and Peter drew the other 8 realms around Asgard as the center. Listening to Peter's story, Jane raised her head and stared at Peter's profile blankly. She was in a strange mood and was about to say something. The door of the cafe was suddenly pushed open. Thor came in wrapped in an ill-fitting suit. Hi, Mr. Peter. Jane was stunned when she saw Thor greeting Peter. Isn't this the guy who was hit twice by her car? Also, he was arrested by S.H.I.E.L.D., so why is he here now? She looked at Peter with some doubts. Peter didn't notice Jane's expression, and now he focused on Thor. As expected, this guy asked the waiter for beer directly. After being politely rejected, his face immediately fell, and he quarreled with a nearby biker gang about a seat. Perhaps considering his current status, Thor controlled his temper and didn't attack the other party. Just when Peter thought this guy had grown up, with a bang, Thor suddenly raised his fist and punched the other party's nose. The result was naturally very bad, and the two sides wrestled together in an instant. Very good, drinking, fighting, and indulging in watching TV. This guy watched TV until 3 in the morning last night. Thor, the god of thunder, has completely become a nerd. Looking at Thor fighting with a biker gang, Jane asked Peter in confusion, didn't he say he was Thor? Why did it become like this? He was injured a little seriously. Peter pointed to his chest and explained to her, for some people, it is easy to give up after experiencing a huge traumatic blow. As he spoke, he walked towards Thor, ready to stop the fight between Thor and the biker gang. Did he hire a cowboy to work on the farm? For a moment, he felt like a helpless old father. Looking at the rebellious son who was drinking, fighting, and addicted to TV in front of him, he wanted to drive him out, but he couldn't do it because he was too kind. Sure enough, I am a person who easily overflows with sympathy, Peter shook his head, feeling that it was rare to find a good person like him. At the same time, Asgard. Loki, who has become the Lord of Asgard, is standing in the temple, looking at the throne. Although he has become the master of Asgard, he does not have any joy or excitement now. Because his father Odin was not dead, but fell into coma when he quarreled with him, and has not woken up yet. Thor is now exiled, but he may come back at any time. And Meowhammer is nowhere to be seen. He was thinking with his head down, and the door of the temple was pushed open, and Volstagg, Hagen, Fandral, and Sif entered. Volstagg, Hagen, and Fandral are the 3 warriors of Asgard, and Sif is the Valkyrie of Asgard and Thor's good friend. The 4 men asked Loki about Thor's whereabouts. Thor has been exiled. This is an order issued by my father before he fell asleep. Loki in the Marvel world looked at the 4 people in the hall. I am your king. Everything you do must be loyal to me, not your current attitude." Feeling Loki's momentum, the four people looked at each other helplessly, knelt on one knee and swore allegiance to him. "My king, I ask you to end the order to exile Thor." Sif kept her hand on her chest and asked Loki. Loki walked down slowly with his scepter in his hand, and said with a complicated expression, "This is my first order. You cannot disobey my father's teachings. We almost went to war with the Jotun giants, and Thor was the instigator of everything. What if I ask you to take back the order?" Fandral, who had a hot temper, asked him bluntly. "Never. Don't forget your identity." Loki's eyes suddenly became sharp. The four people finally chose to retreat because of Loki's identity. Watching the backs of the four people leaving, Loki's eyes flashed with anger. He knew that these guys must have evil intentions. Then arrest them in advance. Loki made a decision in his heart instantly. After coming out of the temple, he immediately notified the guards of Asgard to arrest the four people. At the same time, he rushed to the Rainbow Bridge and asked Heimdall about the whereabouts of the Meow Hammer. Heimdall is an Asgardian soldier who can see everything and hear everything. As the guardian god of Asgard, he stood eternally, responsible for guarding the Rainbow Bridge and keeping any intruders away. He was also one of Odin's most trusted servants. Heimdall did not hide anything and told Loki the whereabouts of Meowthhammer. What? Loki was stunned when he heard that Meowthhammer fell on a man named Peter Patrick. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 244. Please call me Captain of the Motherland. No, this is impossible. I always thought it was all fake. Loki from the Marvel world staggered back a step, his eyes full of disbelief. He could never imagine that a dream he often had was actually real. Like Azu from the Black Robe world, Loki could also dream about the things he experienced in another world. In the dream, he lived on a farm. Although he had two older brothers, Peter Patrick, as a father, never divided his sons into different positions like his father Odin. And there was also a world tree in another world. The only difference was that the scale of the world tree was far less than that of the world he was in. He originally thought it was just a simple dream, but now the dream has come into reality, which gave him a strong sense of loss. Clark, John, and Star-Lord Loki from Marvel whispered the names of several people and looked up at the bottom of the Rainbow Bridge. "Do you want to help Thor?" The expression on his face changed several times, and Loki walked towards this palace. Since these people appeared in his world, they were not easy to deal with. Loki, who often dreams of the DC world, is very clear about the strength of these people. Especially in another world, his father, Peter Patrick, has abilities that are no worse than Odin. Especially the three artifacts in the other's hand. Thinking of this, he went to the temple, hesitated for a moment and turned on the destroyer. The destroyer armor was originally designed for Odin. The whole body is made of Asgard's specialty Urugad steel, so in terms of hardness and affinity with elemental power, this destroyer armor has very outstanding properties. In addition, when making the set of destroyer armor, in addition to Odin applying Odin's blessing magic on the set of armor, other gods also injected part of their energy into this set of destroyer armor. Therefore, with many blessings, this set of armor has a strong combat power. Kill Thor and never let him return to Asgard. Loki in this world gave an order to the destroyer: if others stop you, destroy them together, but soon his brows frowned. After hesitating for a moment, he said to the destroyer again, "Don't hurt Peter Patrick." Bang! 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 The destroyer, which was stomping on the ground with its feet and making rumbling sounds, was activated and walked towards Loki step by step. At the same time, in the hotel, Zeus stared at Loki with a bad look. He suspected that the other party had tricked him and let him be discovered by S.H.I.E.L.D. "You did it, right?" Zeus looked at Loki, who pretended to be innocent. "Otherwise why would I be discovered by the alarm?" "No, of course not me." Loki said that this was not his fault at all. "Maybe you are not careful enough. You know, S.H.I.E.L.D. has many agents with special abilities." "Really?" Zeus didn't believe the other party's nonsense. "Can you name one?" Loki thought for a while. "For example, the guy with a bow and arrow. I remember his name seems to be Hawkeye." "No, he is just an ordinary human. It must be you." This time Zeus learned his lesson. He directly cast his eyes on Peter. "Dad, do you think this was done by Loki?" he complained to Peter. Seeing Zeus kicking the ball towards him, Peter suddenly felt a headache. These two guys are really restless. Pancakes, there was a knock on the door, interrupting the quarrel between the two. The voice of the takeaway staff rang outside the door. Hello, pancakes delivered by Julian's Pie Company. Hearing this voice, Zoo and Loki stopped arguing, and Clark and Star-Lord also cast astonished eyes to the outside of the door. Sorry, it's mine. Thor, who was curled up on the sofa, stood up shakily, apologized to Peter and the others, and then opened the door to take the takeaway back. What is this? Clark asked him puzzledly. I don't know what Thor is doing. Julian's pancakes. The TV said that the crust is very crispy, and the apples inside are Dutch apples. Sol pointed at the takeaway and said to everyone, don't worry, I won't eat alone, I will share a portion with everyone. Sharing is the greatest virtue of a warrior. Wait, Azu frowned and looked at him. Where did you get the money? Sol tasted the pancakes and said with a bulging mouth, Mr. Peter lent it to me. Hearing that the other party said that the money was borrowed from his father, Azu immediately got angry. He gritted his teeth and walked forward, pulling the takeaway back from the other party. How dare you order takeout with my money? I borrowed it. Thor was stunned for a moment, and glanced at Peter. Don't worry, I will pay you back, including the game console. What? Azu looked at him in shock. You also bought a game console? Aren't you here to work on the farm? Thor said indifferently. We are not on the farm now, but you will soon become Star-Lord. Can you still work with your current size? My strength has nothing to do with my size, Thor said to Azu confidently. Really? Then can I try your strength now? Azu was so angry that he laughed, and he said he wanted to try Thor's strength now. John, Peter stopped Azu from wanting to beat Thor. You should be more tolerant of Thor, he has lost a lot. After all, this guy's meow hammer betrayed him, his father died, and his mother didn't see him, he had nothing to lose. Of course, Peter knew that Odin was not dead. He just pretended not to know. Since the other party wanted to play the trick of pretending to be dead, Peter didn't mind playing with him. Yes, I have nothing to lose. Thor looked like a piece of meat on a rolling knife. You still have muscles, Star-Lord next to him interrupted, but you will lose them soon. Thor felt even worse after hearing what Star-Lord said. A few minutes later, Zoo walked out of the hotel. Standing on the street, he put his hands on his waist, puffed up his face and took a deep breath. I have said it before, only black people are the best to use on the farm. Zoo, who was complaining in a low voice, didn't understand why his father didn't kick out Thor, a useless thing. Obviously, he was just a piece of shit that would waste money. Looking left and right, Zoo found a store next to him. Determined to relax, Zoo entered the supermarket. After walking around inside, Zoo finally found a mannequin named Captain America. The mannequin was wearing a set of clothes that were somewhat similar to the uniform of his homeland. Zoo curiously stepped forward to look at the sign, and then he knew the origin of this Captain America. The clothes on the mannequin were exactly the uniforms that Captain America wore when he eliminated the Nazis. It looked stupid. After complaining about Captain America's uniform, Zoo looked up and suddenly felt a malicious threat approaching. He immediately activated his perspective eyes and looked at the source of the threat. Soon, Zoo found that the SHIELD people were monitoring the hotel from a distance. The agents guarding the commanding heights were watching every move here. Zoo frowned and instantly activated his super speed. Whoosh, a gust of wind blew, and Zoo's figure disappeared from the spot. At the same time, the Captain America uniform on the model also disappeared. In the temporary base of SHIELD, Coulson had found out what Peter was and sent agents to closely monitor Peter's family. Zoo's violent actions yesterday severely damaged SHIELD and it was short of manpower. Although Zoo did not kill them without showing his face, most of the agents still lost their combat effectiveness and were forced to recuperate in the hospital. Keep a close eye on their whereabouts and don't let them find them, Coulson ordered his men. He had never thought that someone could lift that hammer. Could that guy really be the legendary Thor? After giving his instructions to his men, Coulson asked the assistant next to him, haven't you investigated their origins yet? No, sir, it looks like they suddenly appeared in this town. We retrieved all the information and didn't find any similar people in the database. Really? Coulson asked in confusion. What's the relationship between that Jane Foster and them? We investigated Jane Foster's previous social circle, and they weren't there. After listening to his men's words, Coulson nodded hesitantly. Bang! At the same time, the SHIELD agent who was monitoring the hotel suddenly found a figure standing in front of him. Captain America. The agent looked at the Captain America in front of him and opened his mouth in surprise. The next second, Azu, wearing the Captain America uniform, grabbed the other's neck and threw him heavily to the ground. The agent, who felt a burst of pain, fainted instantly. Coulson only heard his men shout Captain America and then lost contact. With a frown on his face, he quickly asked the agents in charge of technology to contact the missing subordinates. However, before he could figure out what happened, with a bang, Azu, who broke the sound barrier, fell from the sky. Azu, with his legs slightly bent, stood up and looked at the stunned Coulson. Coulson never thought that one day someone would fall from the sky in front of him. And this person's clothes were the same as his idol, Captain America. Captain America. As soon as Coulson finished speaking, he realized that something was wrong. The other party could not possibly be Captain America. Captain America was still frozen at this time. And Captain America could not fly. No, Azu shook his finger at him. I am Captain Motherland, Zizzy. As soon as Azu finished speaking, lasers shot out of his eyes, instantly melting the guns in the hands of the agents who were close to here. Chapter 245 I'm going to capture Director Nick Fury and make him grow cotton. What? Hearing the other party calling himself Captain Motherland, Coulson was stunned. What kind of a damn name is this? The guns in the hands of the surrounding agents melted, and they groaned in pain from the splatter and burns. But soon, more agents arrived. Seeing the red light in Zu's eyes that had not yet disappeared, coupled with the screams of his colleagues at the scene, even the experienced agents were all stunned. Everyone was stunned in place, looking at Coulson, and no one dared to act rashly. Okay, let's calm down, Captain Motherland. Coulson, who was sweating profusely, forced himself to calm down, stretched out a hand to Zu, and said in a tone as calm as possible, we have no ill intentions. If you had malicious intentions, the result now would not be that you are standing and talking to me. Zu pinched his waist and looked at the agents in SHIELD. From now on, withdraw all your agents who are monitoring the town, otherwise I will not knock them out next time, but kill them directly, understand? Coulson paused. You mean, you are one of them, right? Don't be smart, Zu said to Coulson unhappily. If you don't do what I say, I will arrest all your directors. I checked, his name seems to be Nick Fury. He's a black man, right? Zu smiled and threatened the other party. I will catch him and take him to the farm to pick cotton. Coulson, he can be sure now. The guy in front of him, who calls himself Captain of the Motherland, is definitely a white man with a pure and red family background. This chivalry is simply too pure. Pretending not to hear this, Coulson said to Zu, okay, we will temporarily withdraw everyone. Very good. Zu nodded with satisfaction. Then he patted Coulson on the shoulder and said to him, it seems that we have a pleasant conversation, and we can be considered as friends next time. Seeing that the other party is so sensible, Zu has no need to stay here any longer. He put his feet inwards and raised his hands upwards. With a boom sound, the air exploded and quickly disappeared from Coulson's sight. Looking at Zu, who made a sonic boom in the sky and swept away the clouds, Coulson now believed that the other party might really be able to catch the director and take him to the farm to pick cotton. Connect Director Fury for me. Throwing out the messy thoughts in his mind, he said to his men. The development of these things now has exceeded his authority. He can only report the situation to Director Fury. At the same time, he has to remind the director to be careful about his own safety and not to be caught picking cotton. At this time in the hotel, Peter didn't know that Zu had eliminated the agents. He has always been very clear about the surveillance of himself by S.H.I.E.L.D. However, he didn't take these surveillance to heart. He believed that these people would not dare to mess around. Dad, Loki, who had just seen the scenery in the desert with Jane and her group, suddenly asked him, did you know that Odin is dead? Yeah, I know. Peter turned around, put down the meow hammer that he was stroking and deepening his affection for, and said to Loki, what do you think? No, I just feel a little regretful. What regret? I wanted to see how he is a biased and unfair father. Loki sighed, but it seems that we are late. Do you have any opinion of him? Peter asked Loki curiously. Yes, a little. Loki coughed guiltily and asked Peter, Dad, what do you think of Ms. Frigga? Who? Peter was stunned for a moment and asked him, what Frigga? Queen Frigga, Odin's wife, Loki explained. She is also a powerful warrior and witch. Yeah, Peter thought about it and found the information of this goddess from the depths of his memory. He made up his mind and decided to go to Asgard. The next day, Loki used the Rainbow Bridge in his courtyard to teleport himself to Asgard in the world. Loki transformed himself into an adult, hid his body, hid behind a stone pillar and watched the Asgardians coming in and out. After some investigation, he quickly determined that it was Queen Frigga's palace. After looking around, Loki walked in openly. Although he didn't know where Loki in this world was, he didn't feel his presence in the Queen's palace. At this time, Queen Frigga was standing in the hall, thinking about something. She looked up and saw Loki appear in front of her. Queen Frigga was startled and looked at Loki, who suddenly appeared. "You are Loki from another world." Frigga took a step forward, with surprise in her expression. Loki adjusted his mood and said with a smile, "Yes, it's me. How did you get here?" Frigga asked him. "My world also has a rainbow bridge, and my father is another Odin, but his name is Peter Patrick." Loki comforted her. "Queen, I heard about the death of the god King Odin. I hope you can mourn." He was thinking about how to introduce his father to Queen Frigga so that she would not be disgusted. Unexpectedly, Frigga looked at him with a shocked expression. "No, you may be wrong, Loki," Frigga said to him with a smile. "My husband just fell into deep sleep. He is not dead." As she said that, she made way for him, and a bed appeared in front of him. The old Odin was lying on the bed. Now it was Loki's turn to be shocked. The other party was not dead. "Doesn't that mean my father can't marry a widow?" Loki became depressed. Click, click, click. Soon footsteps were heard outside. Loki, who was depressed, immediately raised his head. Someone came. Small town. In the cafe, Peter picked up the coffee and took a sip. Jane and Kate, who were sitting opposite him, invited him to talk about Asgard. Now the two of them almost believed that he was the god of Asgard. Thor pushed the door open with a bottle in his hand, and greeted the three people happily. "Hey, Mr. Patrick, my beer won the prize." As soon as the voice fell, there was a loud bang. The glass of the cafe shattered, and the ground shook a little. Thor didn't stand firmly and fell to the ground with his arms and legs spread out. Jane and Kate screamed and hid behind. Peter used his body to protect the two women so that they were not hit. Standing up, Peter asked the two women who were pressed under him, "Are you okay?" "No." Jane patted her chest and thanked Peter in shock. Thank you, Mr. Patrick." Kate grabbed Peter's arm tightly, her face pale with fear. After confirming that the two were okay, Peter frowned slightly and looked outside. Clark and Star-Lord came in from outside at this time. Clark said to Peter in a hurry, "Godfather, there is a monster on the street outside." "Monster?" Star-Lord nodded. "Yes, Dad, it has been destroying the streets since it fell from the sky. If it continues like this, someone will probably die in its hands." "Where's Loki?" Peter asked the two of them. "Isn't he with you?" "I don't know, he hasn't been with us from the beginning." "Really?" Peter frowned even more, always thinking that this kid went out to cause trouble again. Shaking his head, temporarily putting Loki aside, he walked out of the cafe. Jane and Kate, led by Peter, also quickly followed out. In the sight of everyone, the crowd at the end of the street screamed and fled, and the humanoid creatures covered with metal were wantonly destroying everything. "What is that?" Jane swallowed her saliva and asked Peter with an incredible face. Peter was silent for a moment and said, "The destroyer." Clark, who was next to him, saw a little girl about to be hit by a street lamp post, and immediately activated his super speed to rush out. Clark hugged the little girl and put her in a safe place. Looking at the iron lump that was spewing flames, Clark rushed towards it. In the place filled with smoke, Clark, who was still attacking, was caught by the fist of the destroyer. Then, with an expression of disbelief on his face, the destroyer grabbed him and threw him to the ground. Bang! With the destroyer as the center, the concrete floor cracked and sank, and stone chips splashed. Seeing Clark being attacked, Zoo roared in anger, and when Clark was about to be smashed to the ground again, he suddenly activated his flying ability and stuck to the destroyer's thigh. Then, with a sudden force, the destroyer, who was nearly twice as tall as a normal person, was instantly knocked to the ground by him, making a dull boom. Seeing Clark and Zoo joining the battle, Star-Lord also rushed up. Star-Lord's eyes glowed white, and the surface of his body instantly burst out with divine energy, hitting the destroyer. Jane and Kate, who were shocked and retreated repeatedly, were stunned by the scene in front of them. What kind of monsters are this family? Chapter 246 Thor, he is doing all my moves. On the other side, Coulson of S.H.I.E.L.D. received the news that an unknown creature appeared in the town, and immediately rushed to the scene with his men. Sitting in the co-pilot seat of the car, Coulson looked at the live video uploaded on the computer tablet, and opened his mouth in astonishment. What is this iron lump? Is it a new thing made by Tony Stark? He turned to his assistant and said. The assistant didn't know how to respond, so he could only smile awkwardly. Immediately contact the ground forces, start evacuating the townspeople, and then launch an attack. Coulson used the drone to observe the scene and gave new orders to his men. Wait, he suddenly saw the iron lump in the video, which was blown away by a figure rushing up at high speed and fell heavily to the ground. For the time being, let the ground forces not attack. Coulson suddenly changed his mind. Looking at Clark attacking the iron lump in the video, he quickly recognized that the opponent was the mysterious guy who raised the hammer, Peter Patrick's son. The next second, in the picture sent by the drone, Azu and Star-Lord also rushed up together, cooperating with Clark to beat up the destroyer. What the hell is this? Are all of this family monsters? After a moment of stunned silence, his eyes unconsciously moved to Azu, whose eyes were emitting lasers. This guy? Why does he look familiar? Stroking his chin, he fell into bad memories. After the destroyer appeared, what everyone didn't expect was that there was more than one destroyer. In Jane's incredible eyes, the second destroyer also descended on the town. Bang! Azu punched the destroyer's head, knocking the opponent back a step. The powerful force made the destroyer crush the ground with his feet. Soon it stabilized its body, and every piece of black armor on its body, under the blessing of Odin's power, was surging like a violent tsunami. As the gaps in the destroyer's armor glowed with a dazzling yellow light, suddenly, the destroyer's face suddenly shot a beam of destructive nature towards Azu. The continuous high-temperature beam emitted by the destroyer could melt almost all substances. Feeling the power of the beam, Azu's face changed, and he quickly activated his super speed and flew into the sky with a whoosh. With a boom, the place where Azu was originally located exploded instantly. The strong energy fluctuations, wrapped in a white circle visible to the naked eye, violently destroyed the surrounding houses. Just as the destroyer's head trembled, and he wanted to continue to launch facial rays at Azu, dozens of energy bullets emitting milky white light suddenly whistled in the distance. Star-Lord no longer continued to use the energy of the gods to attack, but took out the elemental pistol and kept pulling the trigger at the place where the destroyer was. The elemental energy condensed by the rune in the pistol shot out more than 20 rounds in almost an instant. Just as he was shooting, another destroyer rushed towards him, and Star-Lord could only retreat. While retreating, Star-Lord couldn't help but complain, "What is this iron lump made of? How can it be so hard?" Seeing the second destroyer appear, Clark did not stop moving, and suddenly launched a super speed to rush towards the nearest destroyer. Under the cover of Star-Lord, Clark successfully hugged the destroyer's arms that were crossed on his chest to block the energy bullets. Using all his strength to control the opponent's arm, Clark's forward veins popped out, and his voice was like a beast's low roar. Good opportunity. Azu, who had come behind the destroyer, was immediately delighted, and then used all his strength to shoot heat vision at the opponent. However, the destroyer, who had the ability to transform, had an arm that sprang out from his stomach like an enough fluid and suddenly hit Clark's shoulder. Seeing this, Clark quickly stretched out his arm to block the opponent's attack. But he underestimated the power of the destroyer's punch. With a bang, Clark's arm was hit by a speeding locomotive. While his arm was in pain, he even felt a sense of numbness. Clark pulled away, then activated super speed, moved to the side of the store, grabbed the metal vending machine placed at the door and smashed it at the destroyer. However, before the metal vending machine hit the destroyer, it was destroyed by the beam of light emitted from the opponent's eyes. With a bang, the vending machine was detonated in the air, making a deafening sound. Damn it, Azu, who was hanging in the air, cursed angrily. He thought Clark was going to succeed just now, but who knew that at the critical moment, this iron lump could actually retract his arm into his body and then stretch it out from other places. Oh my god, Jane and Foster, who felt the heat waves in the air, kept backing away. As a result, they bumped into Thor, who was standing behind them. Thor held a bottle in one hand and looked at the two destroyers in front of him in shock. He didn't expect Asgard's deadly weapons to appear here. What he didn't expect was that John, Clark and Star-Lord, these three guys would be so strong that they could fight against two destroyers. Just as he was in a state of shock, the destroyer saw Thor and walked straight towards him. Buzz! The destroyer's face emitted billowing flames and swept towards Thor. Peter, who was standing next to Jane and temporarily acting as a bystander, saw that the war had spread to his side and had to stop paddling. Activating super speed, he transferred Jane, Kate and Thor out of the battlefield. Jane only felt a flash in front of her eyes, and she left the place. Seeing the speed Peter displayed, Jane and Kate looked at each other. Thor, who was not able to stand steadily, almost fell to the ground. No, no. He is coming for me. Although Thor was drunk at this time, his mind was clear. I must fight. After taking a few deep breaths, Thor looked at the scene of the three brothers fighting the destroyer in the distance, with a firm expression on his face. This is my honor as a warrior. Thor threw the bottle on the ground and smashed it, then rushed towards the destroyer. As a result, the next second, he was slapped away by the destroyer and fell heavily to the ground. Face down, motionless. Jane hurried over to check on him. Are you okay, Thor? I guess he's dead, Kate guessed and said. He was hit hard just now. What? No, this is impossible. Didn't he say that he was the god of thunder before? How could he die so easily? Jane said in disbelief. This guy was hit by me twice and he was fine. How could he die so easily? The next second, Thor got up again under the shocked expressions of the two. Ahem. I was just not prepared just now. Thor coughed and took a deep breath. I could easily deal with guys like this before. Thor, who had boasted to Jane, looked at the destroyer and rushed over with a roar. But the result was that he flew back faster this time, and was thrown out by the destroyer like a baseball in an instant. He fell to the ground and couldn't get up this time. Jane, Kate, on the other side, Peter frowned slightly as he watched the three brothers fail to take down the destroyer. He stretched out his left hand, as if summoning something. In Jane's puzzled eyes, a sound of breaking air came from the sky. I saw a stream of light cutting through the space, piercing the air, and making a deafening whistling sound. With a dong, the silver stream of light was held in Peter's hand. Jane could see clearly that it was the hammer that Peter had picked up before. Summoning the hammer, Peter raised it up. The next moment, powerful power gathered in his hands, and lightning and thunder began in the sky. Boom! As Peter dropped the Meowth hammer, a dazzling white light cut through the space and hit the destroyer. The thunder accumulated in the sky also fell in an instant. The strong air shock wave instantly swept around, and the destroyer was hit hard and flew out. Thor looked at Peter's familiar movements and said to Jane weakly, I said, these are actually my tricks, will you believe it? Jane didn't know how to answer, and smiled awkwardly. The two destroyers who were hit hard by the lightning summoned by Peter using the Meowth hammer suffered extremely serious blows on the surface of their bodies. Seeing that the Godfather had taken action, Clark moved again, and took the opportunity to hit the destroyer's body hard with his fist, and the air made a huge explosion. As he fell from the air, roared, grabbed the body of another destroyer and flew into the sky, and then threw it heavily to the ground. With a bang, the ground was shaken violently. Then Azu fell from the air at a faster speed like a meteorite, and punched the destroyer in the abdomen. With a bang, the destroyer's abdomen caved in, and the ground where it was standing was shattered by this terrifying force. The destroyer's huge armor began to emit a deafening buzzing sound. It seemed that this huge armor was groaning under the heavy load. At this time, Star-Lord appeared in front of the destroyer and released a rope condensed from the energy of the gods to tie up both destroyers. Azu fell from the sky, his eyes released heat vision, constantly attacking the destroyer. Clark's eyes also shot heat vision at the other destroyer. Star-Lord, who was tying up the destroyer in front, used the energy of the gods to condense in his eyes and shot at the destroyer closest to him. Three different energies all hit the destroyers, causing the surrounding air to evaporate, and the burning heat waves rolled around. What is this? Seeing the waves in Azu's and the other two's eyes, Jane, Kate, and Thor were all stunned on the spot. The three of them didn't quite believe their eyes at this time. What the hell is this? Thor scratched his hair. Are all Peter's sons such monsters? Doesn't that mean he can monopolize his Meow Meow hammer for the rest of his life as long as he wants? Chapter 247 Loki is so bold that he pretends to be Odin to get a divorce. Half an hour ago. Asgard. Loki still didn't know what happened in the lower world. Suddenly, there was a sound of footsteps in Queen Frigga's palace. Loki quickly hid. The person who broke into the gate was the giants of Jotunheim. Queen Frigga was shocked to see the frost giant suddenly appear in front of her. She didn't expect that the frost giant would break into her palace without warning. There is a traitor in Asgard. This was the first thought that came to Queen Frigga's mind. Are you Luffy? Looking at the giant leader in front of her, Frigga calmed herself down and asked him, why are you here? the king of the Jotuns, the reason I came here is to completely end Odin's rule. Laufey looked at Queen Frigga and said contemptuously, Odin has imposed all the inequalities on us before, and today it will be completely ended. As he spoke, he looked at Odin lying on the bed. Don't even think about it. Knowing that the other party had bad intentions and wanted to kill Odin, Frigga stopped talking nonsense with him. With a hint of ruthlessness in her eyes, she pulled out a dagger from her sleeve and stabbed Laufey fiercely. Frigga was not only a wizard, but also a powerful warrior. Bang! Laufey dodged Frigga's dagger attack and attacked the opponent. Frigga, who was agile, turned to attack others, and the dagger cut the throat of a nearby frost giant, and blood spurted out. Seeing his men being killed, Laufey roared and swung his weapon to knock Frigga away. As the leader of the frost giants, although Laufey's strength was not as good as Odin, he was not comparable to Frigga. What's more, it was a group fight now. Frigga, who was knocked to the ground, wanted to stand up and fight back, but Laufey suddenly opened his mouth and spit out a burst of icy air at her. Queen Frigga, who was unable to react in time, was directly frozen. After subduing the opponent, Laufey aimed his eyes at Odin on the bed. Holding the weapon in his hand, he was ready to stab Odin. Unexpectedly, a cold breath suddenly came from behind. Laufey turned his head suddenly, and what he saw was Loki standing in front of him. He breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that it was Loki. The reason why he could enter Asgard was because Loki let them in. The two sides made an agreement. Loki promised to let the frost giants in to kill Odin, and then he would return the treasure ice box after inheriting the throne. The ice box is the treasure of the frost giants, which can summon the power of ice. It is said that the cold air released by it can freeze a planet instantly. However, because of the defeat of the frost giants, the ice box was snatched from the frost giants by Odin. Laufey was about to talk to his ally, but unexpectedly, the other party suddenly took out the ice box. Loki in the Marvel world, without waiting for Laufey to speak, activated the ice box and released cold air towards the frost giants in front of him. The cold air in the ice box is much stronger than the one blown by Laufey. In just an instant, it froze Laufey and his men. Frozen into an ice cube, Laufey, with a look of shock and anger, completely lost consciousness before he could ask the other party why he betrayed him. Loki in the Marvel world looked at the motionless Laufey with a cold expression. You can never end Asgard. Remember, the one who killed you is the son of Odin. As he said that, he raised his staff and shot a beam of energy at the frozen Laufey. Bang! Laufey was directly blown into pieces and died completely. After killing Laufey, he lifted his mother's magic. Although Queen Frigga lifted the ice seal, she still fell into a coma due to freezing. Holding his mother's hand, Loki's expression was complicated. The reason why he let the frost giants in was not to kill Odin, but to lure Laufey in and then get rid of him. The reason for doing this was to prove that, as the king of Asgard, he can do better than Thor, even better than his father. Thor cannot defeat the giants of Jotunheim, but he can destroy them. He is the one who is more qualified to sit on the throne than Thor. I am more suitable to sit on this position than Thor, father, mother, Marvel Loki said, looking at the unconscious Odin and Queen Frigga. No, you can't, a voice sounded from behind him. Marvel Loki turned around suddenly, and saw another self. The two looked at each other, and the air fell into silence. It's you, Marvel Loki gritted his teeth and looked at Loki. Why are you here? This is not your world. As for Loki who lived with Peter, he envied the other party for not having to bear so many fateful responsibilities, and hated the other party for being indiscriminately loved by his father. You can't decide whose world this is. Loki transformed himself into a young man at this time, holding the staff he had stolen from Odin's treasure house before. You can't even control Asgard. How can you say that this world belongs to you? Loki sneered at the other party. You took great pains to let the giants in, just to prove that you are stronger than Thor. How sad. You have been living in this miserable environment. You lack love and always want to know how much you are valued. Actually, I understand you. Loki sighed pretentiously and said to him, you are the son of the noble god king, but your body is the blood of the frost giants that the tribe hates. You were told by your father that you are a fake and that your proud prince identity is false. This is very painful. It is not pleasant to be cruelly pulled down from the altar. He paused for a moment and continued to say to Marvel Loki with an unsightly expression, when a prince is told that he is not the emperor's biological son, but a prince picked up from the battlefield and abandoned by the king of the enemy country, and he is not a purebred frost giant, it is very likely that he was born by his father and a woman from the gods. If it were me, I would be perverted. After being beaten by Loki, Marvel Loki's eyes instantly turned red, and veins on his forehead throbbed. Shut up. You know nothing, idiot. How can you talk nonsense here? Marvel Loki was furious and raised his hand to attack Loki with his staff. However, before he could use his magic, he was blown away by the fire magic prepared by Loki in advance. Marvel Loki fell to the ground with a dusty face. He did not pick up the staff on the ground, but directly picked up the dagger that Queen Frigga had dropped on the ground before, and rushed towards Loki with a ferocious face. Loki, who had studied a lot of rune magic with Peter on the farm, was not afraid of the opponent. He used the staff to construct rune magic on the ground with his backhand, and a ball of fire rose from the ground in an instant, surrounding the opponent. Then, Loki took a step forward, swung the staff and swung it towards the opponent's chest. Marvel Loki, who was close to Loki, was slapped and flew away again. Remember, it was the son of Patrick who defeated you. Loki looked at his other self lying on the ground, shook his head and said. The Marvel Loki who was lying on the ground and unwilling to accept it wanted to stand up, but found a circle of runes on the ground. The confinement circle constructed by the runes bound him tightly and made him unable to move. After Loki dealt with the other party, he walked to the unconscious Frigga and Odin. Looking at Odin's appearance, he suddenly had an idea in his mind. He turned around and transformed himself into Odin's appearance. Marvel Loki, who was lying on the ground next to him, looked at his other self from the farm and turned into Odin, and suddenly had a bad premonition in his heart. What does this guy want to do? Half an hour later, Odin sat on the throne, summoned Sif, the three warriors of Asgard and other Asgard guards, and declared that he had woken up. Of course, Odin at this time was not the real Odin, but Loki pretending to be him. After defeating Marvel Loki, he transformed himself into Odin's appearance, sat on the throne and gave orders. Marvel Loki, tied up on the ground with a gag in his mouth, wanted to speak and expose his fake identity, but he could only make sound. I want to divorce, everyone. Thinking they had heard wrong, the people in Asgard cast their confused eyes on Odin on the throne. Realizing that now was not the time to talk about this, otherwise he would be suspected by everyone, Loki quickly coughed and changed the subject, saying, Loki, you colluded with the frost giants to enter Asgard and tried to assassinate me. As a punishment for you, I will exile you and expel you forever. From now on, I will deprive you of your identity as the Prince of Asgard, and from now on, you cannot return to Asgard. Marvel Loki, was he fooled by another self who grew up on a farm? A damn farm boy. He had just used the name of Odin to expel Thor, but this guy turned into Odin and exiled him. The throne he had always longed for was snatched away by another self. Unwilling to give up, he struggled hard, but he couldn't break free no matter how hard he struggled. He made unclear sounds, but couldn't speak a complete sentence. Odin asked his men to put a collar on Loki's neck and said to him, this thing will imprison your power and prevent you from releasing your magic. Knowing that there was such a thing in Odin's treasure house, Loki took it out and put it on him. Boom, the Rainbow Bridge was opened, and the confused Marvel Loki found that he was sent to the Earth by the Rainbow Bridge before he could react. No, with his unclear screams, the Rainbow Bridge opened, and Marvel Loki was sent directly to the Earth to reunite with his brother. After doing all this, Loki thought of a very important thing. It seems that the destroyer was sent to the Earth by Marvel Loki, and he had to stop quickly. Through the surveillance system that the destroyer came with, Loki saw the situation on the battlefield. Boom thunder, Peter floated in the air, raised the Meow Hammer, and summoned a thunderstorm. The vortex of clouds and lightning gathered together to form an extremely spectacular sight. Chapter 248, Azu raids shield, Black Widow appears. Coulson, who had already driven to the scene, took a breath as he looked at Peter, who was gathering clouds and summoning thunder in the distance. He now wondered if Peter would stand up and announce that he would rule the United States. After getting off the car, Coulson called Nick Fury. Sir, we are in some trouble. You said you were in trouble. I tell you, Coulson, I have been in trouble too. What's wrong? Is that Captain Motherland coming to arrest me? Nick Fury's black accent came out from inside. I tell you, if that Captain Motherland dares to come, I will fucking shove his ass into his mouth and let him know the fate of the race knights in this country. No, sir, it's not Captain Motherland, it's another trouble. What trouble? Coulson then asked his men to broadcast the scene to Nick Fury. Nick Fury, who received the picture, was stunned for a moment and uttered, fuck you. Peter held the Meow Hammer and felt the power transmitted to him. He was surrounded by the power of thunder and lightning, and felt that the thunder was now in his hands. Looking at the destroyer on the ground, Peter smashed the Meow Hammer down. Thunder roared out. Possessing the rune, as the master of the World Tree, he released thunder with a greater power than Thor's thunder, roaring and bombarding the destroyer's body. Hit by the thunder, the strong light quickly surrounded the surrounding space. Jane, who couldn't open her eyes due to the piercing, only felt the ground shaking violently. Amid the explosion, an invisible wave swung in her direction. She was shocked and stepped back a few steps, and opened her eyes with difficulty. There was smoke and dust in front of her, and she couldn't see clearly. Kate next to her also stretched her neck. Thor was stunned in place, and his heart was stirred. Is the power of the Meow Hammer so great? He suddenly felt jealous. I always felt that I didn't try my best when the Meow Hammer was in my hand before. Is this the difference between the current and the former? Every current partner is better than the previous one. People always look forward. Could it be that Meow Hammer also looks forward? As Thor was daydreaming, the smoke and dust gradually dissipated. A big pit appeared in the open space in front. The destroyer, who had been destroying everything recklessly, had been completely shattered. Peter was standing in the pit, holding Meowth's hammer in his hand. Clark, John, and Star-Lord were standing around and looking at him in shock. None of them had expected that Meowth's hammer would have such great power in Peter's hands. Dad, are you okay? Azu came up and asked him worriedly. I'm fine. Peter glanced at the Meowth hammer in his hand. The full-strength blow just now made his body a little tired. What a pity. Azu suddenly looked at the fragments of the destroyer on the ground and said with some regret, if you can keep one and put it on the farm to watch over the house, it will be safe. In this way, you won't be afraid of the guys who come to make trouble. Peter? Are you planning to destroy Smallville? Jane and Kate walked over carefully, looking at the mess on the ground. Their hearts were beating wildly. Jane previously suspected that Peter was the Thor of Asgard, but now she suspected that he was Odin, the king of the gods. Clark, John and Star-Lord, these people are the sons of Odin. In this way, the other party's exaggerated performance is also within the scope of understanding. She suddenly remembered what Peter said to her before, that he would lend her $3,000 to let her be a Valkyrie. Jane now really wants to ask Peter, does what he said before count? You defeated them, Kate asked Peter with a shocked expression. Are you going to be president next? Let me make it clear in advance that I have no objection and I will vote for you. Jane glanced at her bestie. You really have no moral integrity. You are going to sell out the Earth for Peter so soon. On the other side, Coulson looked at the scene after the battle and fell into silence. After a long time, Nick Fury's words came from the communicator. This is too much. Coulson's idea was the same as the director's. He asked him, what should we do? Sir, should we contact him? No, it's not time yet. Keep monitoring him and don't let him find out. Coulson replied to him, it's difficult, sir. Nick Fury asked unhappily, any problem? No, I'm just worried about you, sir. The captain of the Motherland said that if we continue to monitor and investigate, he will. Do you think I'm afraid of him? No, I don't have that idea. Nick Fury was silent for a while and said, okay, let's withdraw our people first. Then he muttered, aliens? Gods? It seems that the threat facing the Earth is more serious than I thought. In the cafe, Peter was asking Azu and the other two about the whereabouts of Loki. After the battle with the destroyer, the cafe was still intact, which had to be said to be a miracle. John, didn't you see Loki? No, I didn't. I didn't see him all day. Zu shook his head at Peter and said, maybe he went to another city to steal things like he did last time, just like he stole the Sandman's artifact last time. Zu never forgot to give Peter a thumbs up. So, I think you don't have to worry, Dad. He will probably be back soon. Are you sure, John? Azu was stunned for a moment. He wanted to say that this was what he had discussed with Loki before he came, and they would look for the Infinity Stones together. Now that Loki is gone, he must have found clues to the Infinity Stones. But if he said it now, he would definitely be scolded by Peter, so Zu remained silent. Dad, what exactly is that destroyer? Star-Lord came over and asked Peter curiously. It is a weapon of King Odin, made of Asgard Euro metal, indestructible, and its power is enough to disintegrate everything in the world. Peter could only put Loki's question aside and explain to Star-Lord. Star-Lord nodded and continued to ask, why are they here? Because someone released him and wants to hunt someone down. As for who? Peter cast his eyes on Thor, who was lying on the sofa watching TV. You can ask Thor. Hearing everyone's eyes on him, Thor put down the remote control. Actually, I don't know. Thor stood up and accidentally touched the beer cans on the table. The beer cans all fell down with a clang. Thor, with an embarrassed expression, immediately put the beer cans back on the table in a hurry. I guess there may be some misunderstandings in the middle. In fact, I have a good reputation in Asgard. With evaluation, Star-Lord Lincoln asked him, since you have a good reputation, why are you exiled? Thor, who is mentally attacked, sat down on the sofa. I used to be too arrogant and thought that everything could be solved with violence. I started a war with Jotunheim, my father exiled me, and then I lost him. Thor was reflecting on his mistakes when he suddenly glanced at the TV, which was reporting an unknown weather phenomenon in New York. This is, staring at the storm on TV, Thor stood up and said in surprise, that's the Rainbow Bridge, someone from Asgard has arrived on Earth. Thor's heart began to get confused. He began to wonder if Asgard was going to take him back. Rainbow Bridge. Hearing Thor's words, Peter frowned slightly. John, go to the scene to see what's going on, Peter asked Zoo to investigate at the Rainbow Bridge in New York. Clark, and Star-Lord stayed here to continue looking for Loki. Okay, Dad, Zoo nodded, walked out of the room, and flew into the sky with a boom. Thor looked at Zoo's back and wanted to ask Peter if he was Odin from another world. If possible, he could teach him how to regain the recognition of Meowhammer. New York. Zoo, who arrived in this city for the first time, landed on the street. Looking up at the shield building not far away, Zoo's eyes narrowed. When searching the temporary shield base in the desert, he threatened Callison to capture the shield director and plant cotton. This was not entirely to intimidate the other party, he did have such an idea. It is said that the Black Director has been injected with some super soldier serum. Although the specific effect of this agent is unknown, it should be the same as compound number 5. The super soldier shield director, and then he captured the locomotive from the Black Robe world. These two guys working together will definitely be more efficient than Thor. Stroking his chin, Zoo began to think about the feasibility of his plan. After thinking for a while, he decided to go to the location where the Rainbow Bridge appeared first. In order to avoid trouble, Zoo put on the Captain America mask he had picked up from the supermarket before. But he always felt that something was missing. Staring at the logo of the shield building, Zoo quickly remembered what he was missing. In the information he had read before, Captain America had a shield similar to that of the Soldier Boy. And that shield is said to be inside S.H.I.E.L.D. Thinking of this, Zoo decided to take the shield back. Although he couldn't use it, he could give it to his father as a gift. Zoo, who had made up his mind, activated his super speed and moved towards the shield building. Inside the shield building, Black Widow Natasha Romano had just returned to S.H.I.E.L.D. after completing a mission. She was about to go to the hospital to visit her friend Hawkeye after learning that he had a broken bone. Swoosh, her hair was blown up, and Black Widow felt a gust of wind passing in front of her eyes. She stopped and stared at the place where the wind blew with suspicion. Feeling something was wrong, she turned around and went back to where she had walked. Buzz, a shrill alarm sounded. Black Widow quickly took out her pistol and quickly ran to the place where the alarm was issued. What happened? Rushing to the room where the alarm was issued, she asked the experimenter in charge. It's the shield. The vibranium shield disappeared. Chapter 249, Zoo becomes the captain of his country and kidnaps Nick Fury. What? Black Widow looked at the laboratory where the vibranium shield was placed with a shocked expression. The shield that was originally placed here has disappeared. The glass of the laboratory was splattered all over the floor, and the dazzling red alarm light kept flashing. What happened? Black Widow asked the laboratory staff next to her. How did the shield disappear? We didn't see what happened at all. The laboratory staff was also confused. Immediately activate the second-level alarm warning. Black Widow, with a serious expression, immediately took out the communicator and alerted the entire shield building. She always felt that the enemy of this attack was not a simple person. At the same time, Nick Fury was processing documents in the office. He raised his head suddenly when he heard the alarm. The report from his subordinates also came to him, telling him that the shield was stolen. Standing up and walking out of the door quickly, Nick Fury took out his mobile phone and said, "Seal off the entire building." Callison led the agents to Nick Fury. "Sir, you'd better not leave your office." Callison said that the threat from Captain Motherland has not been lifted yet. "If you leave the office now, it will be easy for the other party to catch the opportunity." "You mean, I still have to hide in this shelter like a coward?" Nick Fury pointed to the office in front of him and said to Coulson unhappily, "Then I would rather be caught by that guy. I'm not the kind of guy who waits to die of old age." He walked towards the laboratory and said, "Whoever stole the shield, catch him." Recently, the scientific expedition team found Captain America frozen under the Arctic ice. This World War II veteran, who has been sleeping for more than half a century, has not completely died and retains basic life activities. It has always been his plan to wake up Captain America and let him join the Avengers he is about to create. Now that Captain America's most important shield has disappeared, he can't help but get angry. Nick Fury frowned and strode out. Coulson had no choice but to follow his footsteps, praying in his heart that Captain Motherland would never appear. On the other side, Zhu, who had taken the shield, was about to leave the building. He wanted to give this shield to his father. Since the Meow Hammer is indestructible, Captain America's shield is said to be extremely strong. I wonder what the result will be if I let a Meow Hammer hit the vibranium shield. As Zhu thought about it, he moved towards the exit of the shield building. But soon he saw a black salted egg in his sight. This guy seems to be Nick Fury from S.H.I.E.L.D., right? After stopping, Zhu immediately had a new idea. Since this guy came to his door, he could tie him up. It would be a convenient thing anyway. Just by looking at the other party's shiny black bald head, Zhu could be sure that after kidnapping this guy to the farm, he would definitely be a more reliable guy than Thor. Bang! Zhu stopped in front of Nick Fury and his group. The ground vibrated slightly when he stepped on it, and a dull tremor was transmitted in the air. Nick Fury looked at the Captain America in front of him in surprise. No, this is definitely not Captain America. He immediately found the difference between the guy in front of him and Captain America. Although the other party also held a shield, both his temperament and appearance were far from the real Captain America. Coulson, who was standing next to him, recognized the guy in front of him as Captain Motherland. Seeing Zhu appear, Coulson immediately asked the agents to protect the director. The two sides confronted each other in the corridor. "Are you Nick Fury?" Zhu held the shield in his hand and asked the other party, the Black Director. "I am Nick Fury, the director of SHIELD. Who are you? Why do you want to steal the shield? Do you think you are Captain America? That's a bullshit idea. You can't be him." Nick Fury stared at Zhu closely, with the aura of a big boss. "I am Captain Motherland, not Captain America." Zhu snorted and continued to say to the other party, "Now, I am the strongest superhero in the world." Zhu shamelessly said that he was the most powerful. As for Captain America, let's not talk about the antique from the last century. Now, I have a long-term project that I want to work with you on. I hope you won't refuse. Work with me." Nick Fury was stunned for a moment, then looked up and down at the Captain of the Motherland in front of him. He didn't expect that the other party came for the purpose of cooperation. He thought that the other party came to kidnap him. What do you want to cooperate with? S.H.I.E.L.D. rarely cooperates with individuals. If you can't provide valuable conditions, then, before Nick Fury finished speaking, Zhu interrupted him. "Of course it is valuable." After coughing, Zhu took out a few franklins from his pocket and handed them to Coulson next to him. Coulson looked at the banknotes in his hand and fell into a daze. Why did this guy give him money? Just when he was wondering about the purpose of Zhu's operation, Zhu quickly moved to Nick Fury at a speed that no one could catch with the naked eye, and grabbed his wrist. Nick Fury looked at him in shock, not knowing what this guy was doing. "Okay, the deal is done. Now I am your master." Zhu grabbed the hand of the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and said to him with satisfaction. Nick Fury, he finally reacted to what Zhu meant. Feeling humiliated, his face turned darker. Fuck, seeing the director being held hostage, the agents immediately drew their guns and pointed them at Zhu. Seeing that the other party was the first to attack, Zhu threw the shield in his hand with a whoosh. Bang! 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 The vibranium shield was in Zhu's hand and quickly smashed towards the agents. After knocking the nearest agent away, the shield continued to smash towards the agent on the right at a 30-degree angle. Damn it! Don't worry about me, shoot him. Seeing that his men didn't dare to attack because Zhu was holding him hostage, Nick Fury shouted at his agents. Bang! Bang! The men could only raise their guns and shoot carefully. Zhu took back the shield and blocked it in front of him to block the bullets that were shot. Ding ding dong dong. I've already paid, why are you guys so angry? Zhu adjusted his strength and punched Nick Fury, who immediately slid backwards on the floor for a distance. After stopping, Nick Fury took a deep breath and turned his head to glare at Zhu. But don't worry, as the captain of the motherland, I won't bother with you about these little things." As Zhu said that, with a bang sound, his right hand holding the shield knocked the approaching agent away. At the same time, lasers shot out of his eyes, melting the guns of several agents who were shooting. The burned agents immediately fell to the ground wailing. On the other side, Black Widow finally arrived at the scene. Seeing the agents in black clothes and ties fighting with Captain America in the corridor, she was stunned on the spot. What's going on? Why is Captain America fighting with Coulson and others? No, that's not right. Didn't Captain America sacrifice himself for half a century? Seeing the shield in the opponent's hand, which was even more authentic than the genuine Captain America, Black Widow felt that the scene in front of her was too magical. This was a fake Captain America. After being stunned for a moment, Black Widow immediately threw away the unnecessary thoughts in her mind and rushed towards Captain America. When Zhu saw Black Widow rushing towards her, she threw the shield in her hand. Swish, the shield flew towards Black Widow at a very fast speed. Seeing this, Black Widow's face changed. She quickly bent down and slid towards Zhu on her knees. When she got close, she suddenly punched him. As a senior agent of SHIELD, Black Widow is not only a world-class athlete, gymnast, an acrobat, but also an expert martial artist, including karate, judo, kenpo karate, ninjutsu, aikido, French boxing and various styles of kung fu, shooter and weapon expert. A dull dong sounded. What she didn't expect was that her attack on Zhu had no effect. She was shocked and quickly retreated, preparing to distance herself from the opponent. Zhu glanced at Black Widow and patted the place where he was hit. The next second, his eyes turned red and he instantly shot at a heat line of sight, which penetrated the opponent's arm. Black Widow, who was startled, quickly gave up the idea of continuing to attack Zhu and retreated quickly, finally dodging the opponent's heat line of sight attack. But the heat line of sight still rubbed the skin on her arm, and a burning pain came to her. "Who are you?" Covering her arm, Black Widow endured the pain and asked Zhu. "I am Captain Motherland, the strongest superhero." The next moment, in the eyes of Black Widow, Zhu's figure just flickered twice, and in a flash, all the agents present were knocked to the ground by a force, wailing in pain. Blinking again, the guy in front of her who called himself Captain Motherland returned to the original position. Black Widow wanted to stand up, but was hit on the chest by Zhu's shield at close range, and fell to the ground and couldn't get up. Zhu used the same attack on both men and women. After dealing with the agents on the scene, Zhu slowly walked towards Nick Fury on the other side. Nick Fury took advantage of Zhu's moment of leaning over and stretching out his hand and punched him angrily. Zhu easily blocked his fist and flicked it at the opponent's head. Bang! Nick Fury was suddenly attacked by this attack, and his head felt dizzy and he fainted directly. "Very good, this time I have gained a lot." Zhu looked at the shield and the black director that he had taken, and nodded with satisfaction. When he was about to retreat, the sound of the helicopter propeller buzzing was heard. Zhu looked outside and saw a helicopter slowly rising outside the building. Chapter 250, Jane, transfer me 3,000 and I will send you to Valhalla. The helicopter aimed a Gatling gun at Zhu. But because he had Nick Fury in his hand, he didn't dare to fire, so he could only shout to Zhu. Zhu saw that the helicopters were dispatched, and he didn't want to make things worse. So he took the vibranium shield and the unconscious Nick Fury and jumped out of the window. With a crash, the glass was shattered, and Zhu fell straight down. The moment he touched the ground, he stopped falling, accelerated and flew straight forward, and disappeared from the helicopter pilot's side in the blink of an eye. "Is this Captain America?" The pilot widened his eyes and made an unbelievable sound. Desert Town. At this time, Peter didn't know that Zhu had kidnapped Nick Fury. He was now saying goodbye to Jane, Kate and the professor. After an unforgettable experience, the three of them had to go back to university to continue their studies and research. After Kate hugged Peter, she handed him a piece of paper with a phone number. "This is my phone number. If you need help next time you come to New York, such as a ballot, you can find me. Thank you, I will." Peter took the note and thanked the other party. "Take another photo as a souvenir?" Kate came over with a smile on her face, hugged Peter's arm and asked Jane to take a photo of the two of them. Jane could only helplessly act as a tool for taking pictures of the two. When the photo was over, the professor and Kate left, leaving the two of them alone. "Are you going back to your Asgard?" Jane was silent for a while and asked him, "I mean, are you going back to your life in heaven?" "No, Jane, I'm not a god." Peter shook his head and said to her, "I'm just a person from another world, But compared to you, the biggest advantage is probably that I have some power and a longer life. That's God to us." Jane smiled at him and said, "But I don't care about these." As she said that, she took out her notebook and handed it to Peter. This was the notebook that Peter had given her to describe the 9 realms. "I'm giving it to you. Just consider it as a gift for our acquaintance during this period of time." Peter took the notebook from the other party. "Isn't it very important for your research? Is it okay for you to give it to me?" "Sometimes it is very important, but now I don't think it is very important." Jane looked at the professor and Kate who were waiting for her in the distance, and looked at the sunset. "I mean, compared with your long life, no matter what I do in my short life, it may not be very important, but if this gift can leave something in your life, it will be very meaningful." Peter stared at the notebook in front of him, and couldn't help but think of Jane's fate in the future. According to the original plot development, this former girlfriend of Thor will become the female Thor. The cause is that Jane suffers from breast cancer, and in the end it is almost incurable. The only treatment method is injection of drugs plus irregular chemotherapy. She tried her best to find a cure, and finally became the female Thor by mistake. However, every time Thor's hammer leaves her, Jane Foster's condition will become more serious. For Thor's hammer, normal cells and cancer cells are part of Jane Foster's body, and chemotherapy drugs for cancer treatment are poisons. Therefore, when Jane Foster transformed into the female Thor, Thor's hammer would automatically eliminate poison, that is chemotherapy drugs, which resulted in almost no effect on her treatment every time. In the end, she knew that she would be completely incurable after transforming into Thor again, but she still chose to raise the hammer to help others. After completely losing her breath of life, she died in Thor's arms without regret. That, Jane quaffed, interrupting Peter's thoughts and pulling him out of Jane's future story. She looked at Peter and asked him, "Does what you said before still count?" Peter was stunned for a moment, and asked her in confusion, "What did I say?" "You said, I give you $3,000, and you let me be a Valkyrie." Jane said to him in a joking tone, "Does this deal still count now?" "Of course it counts." Peter's eyebrows moved, and he said to her, "But I have another deal now. Give me $3,000, I won't let you be a Valkyrie, but I can send you to Valhalla after you die. Are you willing?" "Valhalla?" Jane was stunned for a moment, then stared at Peter with wide eyes. "You mean, I can go to heaven after I die?" "Although it's not the same system, it's almost the same deal," Jane said excitedly. "That means we will meet in Valhalla in the future, right?" It should be Peter didn't expect the other party to be so interested in Valhalla. He just thought that he could help the other party when he had cancer, not really sending him to Valhalla. Besides, he didn't know how to send people to Valhalla. After all, the world tree was only the 9 realms that had not been fully developed. But seeing the other party's expectation and excitement, Peter finally nodded. Of course, he had a lot of ways to cure cancer, and he could help her solve it when the time came. Hearing Peter's affirmative answer, Jane came up excitedly and hugged Peter. Thank you, Peter." A few minutes later, Jane and the others drove away. Thor stood behind Peter with a bottle of wine, and said with a sense of loss, "She looks like a good girl." For some reason, Thor always felt that he had missed something. "Why? Do you know her well?" Peter turned around and asked him. "No, I just said a few words to her, but I can feel that this is the sensitive and accurate intuition of a warrior, and I have always been good at this." Thor picked up the beer bottle and wanted to pour it into his mouth, but considering that it was not good to do so in front of Peter, he put the bottle in his hand down embarrassedly. Looking at the other party's serious and affectionate expression, Peter thought he wanted to say something. As a result, Thor asked him, "Mr. Peter, can I get another $3,000 in advance?" "What?" Peter looked at him in shock. "The $1,000 I gave you before was spent so quickly." "Yes, I bought a mobile phone." Thor scratched the back of his head a little embarrassedly, and said, "Just consider it as my advance payment of wages." "Advance payment of wages?" "Yes, didn't Loki say that he wanted me to work on the farm? Since I work, I will definitely get paid, right? I see that this is how it is done here, so $3,000 is my advance payment of wages," Thor said confidently. "This is called advance consumption. You haven't done any work now, but you have advanced so much wages." Peter frowned as he looked at the Thor who had completely transformed into a fat otaku. This guy is not thinking of finding an opportunity to run away, right? According to Thor's current advance consumption posture, he must force him to work. And he must not let him go until the advance payment of wages is filled. Forget it, as long as you're happy. Peter was too lazy to say anything. He counted out $3,000 from his waist bag and put it in Thor's hand, then turned and walked towards the cafe. But before leaving, he reminded him, pay attention to controlling your diet, be careful that your belly is getting bigger and bigger. After getting the money, Thor was in a good mood and assured Peter, I promise. Wait, Peter suddenly remembered something, stared at him suspiciously and asked, you don't want to buy a mobile phone and recharge the game? No, of course not. After coughing, Thor said to Peter with a serious expression, I don't know what you are talking about. In the evening, Peter was in the hotel, looking at the Captain America in front of him in shock. He glanced at the shield in the other's hand, and asked Zhu uncertainly, is this Captain America's shield, John? Yes, Dad. Zhu took off Captain America's hood and said to him, I remember you mentioned this shield, so I took it back from shield. Didn't I ask you to investigate the Rainbow Bridge? Peter frowned and asked him, why did you go to shield? He was worried that this kid would get into trouble, but he took Captain America's shield back directly. It was just on the way, Dad. Zhu smiled unnaturally. I went to the Rainbow Bridge, which was surrounded by police. I investigated, but didn't find any suspicious people, so you dressed up as Captain America and stole the shield. I didn't want to use it myself, Dad. Zhu expressed his filial piety. This is for you. After that, he handed the shield to Peter. What's the use of this thing? I'm not a soldier boy. Peter took the shield and looked at it for a few times, frowning more and more. He couldn't help but think in his heart, you took Captain America's shield, how can he fight Thanos in the future? At this time, Peter had no idea that if he took Thor's hammer, how would Thor fight Thanos in the future? Hey, Thor, can you turn down the volume of the TV? Hearing the voice coming from the TV, Peter turned around and shouted at him dissatisfiedly. The host's report came from the TV. Breaking news, a government building in the city is suspected to have been attacked by terrorists, and many government workers were injured. The government has not made any statement on the terrorist attack. According to internal sources, a senior member of the Security Council is likely to be kidnapped in this terrorist attack. The news on TV immediately attracted the attention of Peter and others. Peter looked at the shield building on the TV screen and fell into a daze. After a while, he cast his gaze on the guilty Zhu, and asked with a complicated expression, John, did you also kidnap the director of S.H.I.E.L.D.? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.